The Duke and Duchess adopted a boy to be a companion for their son. However, during his bath, they discovered he was actually a girl. Lonnie trembled with fear. She believed the Duke would be furious, and then he would return her to the orphanage. Then, like her friend, she would be beaten to death by the headmistress. The Duchess, now aware of the truth, was in a difficult position, but she still instructed the maid to give her a good bath and dress her properly. The moment he saw Lonnie, the Duke's heart melted. How could there be such an adorable little girl? The next moment, Andy, the Duke's second son, rushed in, yelling, "I told you, I don't need a playmate." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Lonnie standing there. He asked his mother, puzzled, why she had brought home a doll. Everyone present couldn't help but laugh. "We originally intended to bring him home to be your playmate, but it turned out to be a girl." Lonnie bowed repeatedly, apologizing, and she begged them not to send her away. Her sweet and innocent appearance instantly captured Andy's heart. Isn't this the legendary, adorable little sister? So, he immediately ran to his father and begged him to let Lonnie stay. "I don't mind that she's a girl. I really like her." These words gave Lonnie a glimmer of hope. Perhaps she really could live here. However, the Duke said sternly, "Enough. Now that you've seen the child, that's enough. It's getting late. Go back to your rooms." His cold voice saddened Lonnie. She hadn't expected to harbor such unrealistic fantasies. After all, she was the one who had deceived them first. Now, only the Duke, Duchess, and Andy remained in the room. The Duchess pleaded with her husband to let Lonnie stay. If she were returned, she would surely be severely punished. Andy firmly echoed his mother's plea, but the Duke remained resolute. No matter what, it wouldn't do. The two of them, disagreeing, tried to reason with him. But the Duke added, "She's just so unbelievably cute. I really should have a daughter," he continued. His friend had always boasted about his daughter in front of him. He hadn't expected that in trying to find a playmate for his son, he would stumble upon a girl. Perhaps this was fate, so he decided to let the girl stay for the time being. However, he would consider the matter of formally adopting her as his daughter later. This decision would avoid many inconveniences for their future relationship development. The Duchess was happy, but also puzzled. If he hadn't intended to send her away, why had he put on such a frightening expression and sent her back to her room? It turned out the Duke simply thought she looked tired and wanted her to rest. Andy added, "Father's expression just now looked like he was going to eat someone." The Duke panicked. His first impression had been so terrible. Meanwhile, Lonnie was overjoyed to learn she could stay, but she was terrified to hear that the Duke was coming downstairs. After all, the man's expression earlier had indeed been quite frightening. Just then, the Duke knocked and entered. But the girl was already hiding by the bed, trembling. "Did you get some rest?" Lonnie answered loudly and nodded vigorously. "Thank you so much for allowing me to stay here. I'm so sorry I couldn't greet you properly right away." The Duke wondered what she had been through to be so afraid. So he softly reassured her, "I didn't come here to listen to your apologies. I came to give you a new name." It turned out that the Duchess had brought up the matter. When they were expecting their eldest son, they had thought of a girl's name. It would suit her perfectly. "Your name will be Lonnie. Lonnie Evelyn." The girl remained silent. This made the Duke think she didn't like it. Unexpectedly, tears welled up in her eyes. She thanked the Duke for giving her such a beautiful name. Her sweet smile instantly captivated the man's heart. So, the Duke immediately ordered the maid to prepare the room his sister had used for her. This made the maid grind her teeth in anger, silently cursing. How could a lowly orphan stay in that room? Suddenly, the Duke, who was about to leave, said, "There's something I forgot to mention." The maid smirked, thinking the Duke couldn't possibly let an orphan stay in such a nice room. Unexpectedly, the Duke spoke seriously and earnestly. "Your nickname is Lolo. Remember that." Both the maid and Lonnie were stunned. The girl had struck it rich, going from an orphan to the Duke's second son's playmate. On her first night at the Duke's mansion, she had a nightmare. She dreamed of the time she was falsely accused and brutally beaten by the headmistress. Seeing that Lonnie hadn't gotten up yet, the spiteful maid angrily woke her up with a jolt. Lonnie was startled, bolting upright in bed, gasping for air. It was clear she had been badly frightened. However, the maid didn't care. She curtly told her to get up and wash quickly. She looked down on Lonnie, the orphan, from the bottom of her heart. Just a commoner, yet she's landed in clover. Look, she's even dripping water on the floor. Wipe it up and change your clothes quickly. Lonnie gazed at the dress on the bed, her heart brimming with joy. She never imagined she would wear such a beautiful dress. "Hey, what are you standing there for? Do you need me to dress you?" The maid's sudden outburst startled Lonnie. "I can do it myself," she stammered. But after the maid left the room, Lonnie fell into deep thought. How was she supposed to put this on? Suddenly, Andy's voice rang out from the hallway. Lolo, he called excitedly. Big Brother's here to get you. The maid who had bathed Lonnie earlier asked with concern, how is she feeling? Andy was still unaware of the bruises. I'm fine, Lonnie quickly replied. Once they were alone, she begged the maid to keep her secret, but she knew it wouldn't be long before everyone found out. Soon, the first family dinner began. The Duchess greeted her warmly, calling her sweetheart. She asked if Lonnie had slept well. Even Andy thoughtfully cut her steak for her. You have to take big bites. That's how it tastes best, he instructed. Lonnie opened her mouth wide, mimicking him, stuffing her cheeks full. She looked just like a little hamster, charming both the Duke and Duchess. It's so good. It's delicious, she exclaimed. Andy puffed up with pride. See, listening to your big brother is always right. Just then, Andy noticed Lonnie's sleeve dipping into steak sauce. He quickly reached over to roll it up for her. The bruises on her wrist were shockingly visible. Lonnie dropped to her knees, pleading, please don't send me away. I know these ugly marks don't belong here, but please don't make me leave. To her surprise, the Duke didn't say a word. He simply led her to the carriage. May I ask you something? He said once they were inside. Were those bruises from the headmistress? Lonnie trembled, too afraid to answer. The Duke, thinking she was still scared of him, spoke gently. If you feel uncomfortable living with us, I can find someone else to care for you. But we all hope you'll stay with us. Of course, only if you want to. His words warmed Lonnie's heart. But when she looked up, she saw the orphanage. Was he returning her after all? Had he discovered the bruises she had tried so hard to hide? Without a word, the Duke escorted her inside. The headmistress bustled out to greet them, her face plastered with a sycophantic smile. She assumed the person in the carriage was the Duke's daughter, but when she saw Lonnie's face, she erupted in a torrent of abuse. You little brat, how dare you trick me? She launched into a tirade of accusations, claiming Lonnie was a habitual liar. But the Duke didn't believe a word of it. He smiled at Lonnie and said, don't worry about a thing. Tell me everything. Don't be afraid. As if emboldened by his words, Lonnie found her voice. The liar is the headmistress, she cried. She knew my friend Pete didn't do anything wrong, but she beat him to death anyway. The headmistress stammered and avoided the Duke's gaze, her guilt evident. The Duke immediately had her taken away. That evening, they finally returned to the mansion. The Duchess and Andy were waiting anxiously outside. The moment they saw Lonnie, they rushed forward, checking her for injuries and showering her with concern. Lonnie could scarcely believe she had found such kind people. They believed her without question. She was overwhelmed with gratitude. That night, the Duchess brushed Lonnie's hair, imagining how lovely it would look when it grew longer. She gently dabbed holy water on Lonnie's bruises. As the extent of the injuries became clear, the Duchess's heart ached. My dear, she asked softly, why were you living as a boy at the orphanage? My mother told me to, Lonnie replied. I don't really know why. The Duchess nodded understandingly. Perhaps she was afraid you'd be bullied. You don't have to hide anymore. You're safe here now. Lonnie felt a surge of happiness. The next day, the Duke arranged for Lonnie to have identification papers. He himself was the guarantor. Her full name was now Lonnie Evelyn Clay. It was the surname of a noble family distantly related to the Duke. It would be helpful for her education and future prospects. Lonnie was deeply grateful. She promised to study hard and learn to read and write. She would do anything the Duke asked. Then go out and play, the Duke said. Lonnie was confused. He's been hinting that he wants to play with you, the Duchess explained with a smile. Even if it weren't for Andy. A child's job is to play. So go on, get to work. Soon, the two arrived at the grassy field outside. Andy flopped down with a dramatic sigh and gestured for Lonnie to sit beside him. All right, young master. Lolo, why do you always call me young master? Can't you call me brother? I wouldn't dare. Lonnie replied, I can't be so disrespectful to the young master. Andy, though a little disappointed, decided to let it go for now. Fine, he conceded, but you have to call me brother later when you feel more comfortable. Lonnie hesitated, unsure whether to link pinkies to seal the promise. Seeing her reluctance, Andy grabbed her hand and linked their fingers. Then, satisfied, he lay back down on the grass. Within moments, soft snores escaped his lips. Lonnie decided to explore the nearby area while Andy slept. The lake shimmered with an almost unbelievable beauty, and she decided to climb a tree for a better view, just like she used to. But her new shoes weren't suited for climbing. Halfway up, she lost her footing and began to tumble down. Just as disaster seemed imminent, a handsome young man appeared as if from nowhere and caught her. Who was this boy? Falling from a 100-foot tree, caught by a handsome stranger, Lonnie found herself instantly smitten. The next moment, she learned he was Iyuz, the Duke's eldest son. Iyuz had returned home early and had gone to the forest to meet his younger brother, and, incidentally, to see the girl his father had mentioned in his letters. As he thought this, Iyuz smiled at Lonnie, sending a blush creeping up her cheeks. Just then, Andy stirred and asked, "Lolo, why aren't you eating?" The nickname Lolo caught Iyuz's attention. "Brother, you can call her Lolo," Andy explained. "It's a nickname father gave her." Caught off guard, the Duke, slightly embarrassed, tried to maintain his composure. "It suits her," he said. "Yes, it does. I'll call her Lolo too," Iyuz agreed. Lonnie had hoped to introduce herself with her new, elegant name, but that plan was now ruined. Suddenly, Andy shoved a piece of cake into Lonnie's mouth. The sweet strawberries and cream were a delightful surprise. The Duke and Duchess, watching this scene, exchanged amused glances, but Iyuz watched with a strangely intense gaze. What was going on? Suddenly, the butler announced the arrival of guests. It was the Marchioness and her daughter, Lydia, the Duke's sister and niece. The women entered with an air of barely concealed hostility, clearly looking for trouble. It turned out the spiteful maid had been busy spreading malicious gossip. She had told them that Lonnie was a cunning liar who had disguised herself as a boy to infiltrate the household, tricked the Duke into giving her a noble surname, and even taken over Sophia's old room. Sophia was determined to have Lonnie thrown out. Meanwhile, Lydia, from the moment she arrived, had been trying to get close to Iyuz. Just then, Iyuz noticed Lonnie's glass was empty and stood up to refill it. This small act of kindness infuriated Lydia. The malicious mother and daughter were already plotting Lonnie's expulsion. The tea party ended abruptly. Andy grumbled about his dislike for his aunt and Lydia. "Aunt Sophia is always lecturing me," he complained, "and Lydia always follows brother around, bossing me about like a servant. But now I have you, Lolo. We can play together." He excitedly pulled Lonnie towards his room, only then noticing the scrapes and bruises on her hands. It turned out they were from her fall from the tree. The doctor was puzzled. The wounds, though fresh, already showed signs of healing. "Do your wounds always heal this quickly?" he asked. "Yes," Lonnie replied. "Even deep cuts heal very fast." The doctor examined Lonnie's arm. The bruises from her arrival were completely gone, even though the Duchess had only used holy water. They shouldn't have healed so quickly. He couldn't explain it. After a few more instructions, the doctor left, lost in thought. This encounter sparked something in Lonnie. For the first time, she had an idea of what she wanted for her future. She wanted to be a doctor, a remarkable healer. Just then, Andy popped his head in, inviting Lonnie to play in his room. But Lydia suddenly appeared, wearing a saccharine smile. "It's so lovely to see you," she gushed. "Why don't we have some girl time? Just us." Lonnie, knowing Lydia was a true, noble lady, thought that spending time with her might help her learn how to fit in. She readily agreed. When no one was looking, a cruel smile twisted Lydia's lips. What was she planning for Lonnie? Just for catching her brother's eye, Lonnie had become the target of the Marquis's daughter. While feigning kindness, Lydia instructed her maid to openly mock Lonnie's lack of manners. "Holding your teacup with 2 hands and making such a racket. You're lowering my lady's standards," the maid sneered. Lydia pretended to scold her maid, but her words were a thinly veiled insult aimed at Lonnie, branding her a country bumpkin. Unbeknownst to Lydia, Iyuz had overheard everything. He had run into Andy earlier and learned that Lydia had taken Lonnie away. He initially thought they would get along, being close in age. However, a past incident involving Lydia made him uneasy. A servant had once accidentally spilled water on him. He hadn't been angry, even asking if the servant was all right. Later, Lydia had not only berated the servant, but also physically punished her. While this situation was different, Iyuz still felt a prickle of worry. He decided to check on Lonnie himself. He hadn't expected to witness such a scene. "How dare you insult a child under the Duke's protection? Are the Marquisite's servants always this arrogant?" Iyuz's voice was sharp. Lydia offered a disingenuous apology for her maid, but Iyuz wasn't fooled. He stepped in front of Lonnie, shielding her. "This child has the right to do anything here. As for that servant, the Duke will handle her punishment." Lydia, though trembling with rage, forced a smile for Iyuz's benefit. Inwardly, however, she was already plotting her next move. After leaving the room, Lonnie berated herself for her ignorance. Iyuz, noticing her distress, tried to comfort her. "You don't need to be so timid," he said gently. "This is our home, and they are merely guests." His words, however, had the opposite effect. They only strengthened Lonnie's resolve to learn proper etiquette, determined not to embarrass the Duke's family. This played right into Lydia's hands. She offered to have Lonnie join her lessons. Lonnie, naive and grateful, accepted. Just then, an unexpected figure appeared. It was Pete, her friend from the orphanage, who was supposed to be dead. Lonnie rushed forward, her heart pounding, but the boy looked at her blankly, as if he didn't recognize her. Lonnie apologized for her outburst. Beside her, Lydia spoke coldly, "You don't need to apologize. He's here to take beatings for me." Lonnie was confused. "Noble children don't get beaten by teachers," Lydia explained. Hairdressing class soon began. Lonnie, completely unfamiliar with the intricacies of styling, made several mistakes. This angered the tutor, who grabbed a ruler, ready to strike. Lydia, feigning concern, offered the other boy as a substitute. Kind-hearted Lonnie refused to let someone else be punished in her place. Her scheme successful, Lydia didn't press the matter. The sharp crack of the ruler echoed through the hallway. A few days later, Andy, fresh from sword practice, went to find Lonnie. He was shocked by what he saw. Lonnie looked gaunt and pale. "Lolo, what happened? You're practically a skeleton. Who did this? I won't let them get away with it." His unexpected concern broke Lonnie's fragile composure. Just then, EUs arrived. Overwhelmed with shame, Lonnie covered her face and tried to flee. Before she could escape, EUs scooped her up as easily as if she were a small chick. "Tell me what happened first." The orphan girl, beaten for her lack of etiquette, looked so frail and pitiful that it worried her second brother. Overwhelmed by their concern, she burst into tears again. Both brothers crowded around her, demanding answers. Observant EUs noticed the marks on her hands and realized she had been hiding something. He found an excuse to send Andy away. Then, kneeling before her, he gently applied ointment to her wounds. His tender touch and focused expression made Lonnie's heart flutter. She asked him to keep her secret, but he simply told her to rest and turned to leave. "Young master, I want to go with you. I don't want to be alone in my room." EUs was puzzled. She had a maid assigned to her. How could she be alone? But before he could voice his confusion, he realized something was wrong. The room was indeed empty, like an unused space. Even the fireplace was cold. He remembered overhearing the maids plotting something earlier that morning. It had been about Lonnie. He wrote a note to his mother, asking her to visit Lonnie's room. The Marchioness immediately decided to join them. After all, she had orchestrated this whole drama. How could she miss the climax? As they passed Lydia's room, they heard a commotion inside. Lydia's necklace was missing. She cried, claiming it was a precious gift from her father. Then, with a look of feigned innocence, she mentioned that she had been spending time with Lonnie in lessons recently, subtly directing suspicion towards her. A carefully orchestrated tea party was about to begin. The Marchioness showered EUs with praise and flattery. She desperately wanted her daughter, Lydia, to marry him. In the entire empire, divine power resided only within the royal family and the Duke's household. This power wasn't just a symbol of authority. It represented legitimacy, rivaling even the royal bloodline. Rumors had spread that young EUs already possessed this divine power. If Lydia married him, everything would be hers. However, EUs had little interest in indulging his overbearing aunt. He decided to use Lonnie as a means of escape. With a few carefully chosen words, he made the already nervous girl flustered and uneasy. He then subtly signaled to a nearby maid, instructing her to accidentally spill tea and stain the carpet. Feigning surprise, he produced the necklace he had hidden earlier, accusing Lonnie of stealing it and claiming her nervousness was proof of her guilt. "How dare you be so ungrateful? The Duke's household has been so kind to you, and this is how you repay us." Falsely accused, Lonnie frantically denied ever seeing the necklace. But the Marchioness pressed on, relentless. "You dare to lie. It just goes to show, low-born people are beyond redemption." Lonnie desperately wanted to explain, but the words caught in her throat. She instinctively looked at EUs and saw his face was grim. Was he angry with her too? Just then, the Duchess slammed her hand on the table, bringing the charade to a halt. Physically abusing a child is unforgivable, but now you're slandering her without a shred of evidence. The Marchioness, momentarily stunned, refused to admit her wrongdoing. Instead, she cast herself as the victim. As the two women locked horns, EUs scolded his aunt, "Shouldn't you, as an adult, feel ashamed of yourself?" He then turned to Lonnie, his expression softening instantly. "Don't worry, Lolo. We'll protect you. Now, tell us what really happened." The boy who had just been so harsh with his aunt now beamed at Lonnie. The sight of this made Lydia tremble with jealousy. "You actually believe that little wretch?" EU's face turned to ice. The Marchioness became even more indignant. "The evidence is clear. You choose to believe her lies. This is an insult to our entire family. I won't let this stand." At that moment, the Duke entered the room. "You're the one who overstepped," he stated firmly. Ignoring his sister's attempts to defend herself, he walked directly to Lonnie, gently taking her hand. "I'm so sorry, Lolo. I had no idea this was happening." He glared at his sister, Sophia. "I hear you're the one responsible for her condition." Sophia, visibly flustered, insisted it was the tutor. "I had nothing to do with it." But the Duke wasn't fooled. He knew the tutor wouldn't dare act without Sophia's backing. "As this child's guardian, I have the right to discipline you. Perhaps you should find a new godfather." Sophia was aghast. Her brother was choosing this girl over her, even risking a rift with their family. His resolve was clear. Lydia, enraged, screamed, "Who does she think she is? Uncle, you're actually going to adopt her as your daughter. You choose that lowborn orphan over me." Sophia, realizing the battle was lost, didn't argue further. She stormed out with her daughter, muttering curses under her breath. The Duke, with a subtle gesture, dismissed Andy and Lonnie, preparing for a reckoning. "Summon every servant in this house," he commanded. Meanwhile, Lonnie, clutching the necklace, decided to return it to Lydia. It looked expensive, and she didn't want to keep something that wasn't hers. But as they opened Lydia's door, Lydia flew at Lonnie, raising her hand to strike her across the face. Andy, without hesitation, stepped in front of Lonnie, taking the blow. Despite the stinging pain, he grinned. "Wasn't I cool just now? I bet I look like a really awesome big brother." Furious, Lydia shrieked, "Lonnie is nothing but trouble for this family." Lonnie, usually timid, suddenly stepped forward, her gaze unwavering, advancing on Lydia until the other girls stumbled backward in fear. But instead of retaliating, Lonnie simply took Lydia's hand and placed the necklace in it. "Thank you, Miss Lydia. Thanks to you, I've learned so much. I'll take your words to heart and ensure I'm not a burden to this household." The Duke, learning of the mistreatment of the girl he'd taken in, was furious. He summoned all the servants, who whispered amongst themselves, unsure of what was happening. Only the tutor, who had struck Lonnie, looked truly apprehensive. She hadn't escaped with the Marchioness and was intercepted by the guards. And, standing at the back of the crowd, was filled with guilt. She had tried to be kind to Lonnie, but hadn't been able to stop the other maids from tormenting her. She felt she had failed. And then there was the boy, who had been beaten for trying to stop Lydia's rampage, left there to fend for himself. Just then, the Duke descended the staircase. He asked if they knew why they had been summoned. When no one answered, he walked directly to the tutor. "Tell me what you did wrong." The woman remained stubbornly silent, refusing to confess. The Duke cut straight to the point. "You dared to lay your hands on the future Duchess of Mars." The two maids who had participated in the abuse instantly paled. They hadn't realized that an orphan girl held such importance. The Duke's expression darkened. His words were even more chilling. "I hereby strip you of the title bestowed upon you by the former Duke. Get out of my territory and never return." Judging by the reactions of the onlookers, the punishment was clearly considered severe. The Duke shared this concern, but he knew that without drastic measures, Lonnie would likely face similar abuse again. "From now on, I will question each of you individually. I already know everything, so don't even think about lying." Meanwhile, Lonnie stared at the necklace Lydia had discarded. Andy, not wanting her to dwell on something so trivial, tossed it aside. This reminded Lonnie to urge Andy to see a doctor. The boy scratched his head sheepishly. "If you call me big brother, I don't think it would hurt anymore." The girl questioned him innocently, "But shouldn't you get some ointment on it to make it feel better?" Just then, Lonnie noticed a group of people carrying luggage out of the mansion. Among them was the boy who had been beaten. Close behind followed, and the maid. She ran over excitedly, asking him where they were going, and stammered, unable to answer. At that moment, the butler approached, asking Lonnie if she knew the maid. "She's the kind sister who's been nice to me since I arrived," and smiled, touched, but still didn't speak up for herself. The butler then explained that the Duke and Duchess had ordered their dismissal. Lonnie froze, then burst into tears. "No," she cried. The Duke, having purged his household for the sake of the girl he'd brought from the orphanage, trembled with anger as he read the servants' testimonies. He and the Duchess felt a pang of guilt. If they had been more attentive, this wouldn't have happened. As a result, the Duke banished all those involved, refusing to provide letters of recommendation. This effectively ruined their careers, making it difficult for them to find new employment. He had assumed EUs would find the punishment too harsh, but the opposite was true. EUs felt it wasn't enough. Their treatment of Lonnie was unforgivable. The Duchess believed it was sufficient. The child is fragile. Excessive punishment might be counterproductive. She felt it best to keep the matter from Lonnie. However, at that moment, the butler rushed in with urgent news. Miss Lonnie already knows. She's crying outside. Lonnie was clutching in skirt, refusing to let her go. As soon as the Duchess appeared, Lonnie rushed forward, begging her not to send and away. The Duchess, seeing this, assumed something had gone wrong in the process, and, however, felt differently. She blamed herself. She had witnessed the others bullying Lonnie, but hadn't been able to stop them. Kind-hearted Lonnie quickly interjected and did nothing wrong. When I first arrived, she was the only one who spoke to me kindly, so I want you to let her stay, and was deeply moved. Such a small act of kindness, yet it had been remembered. The Duchess smiled, touched by the scene. You're the first person she's ever wanted to keep this much, so you'll be her personal maid, and was overjoyed. I'm not worthy, but if you give me the chance, I'll take the best care of Miss Lonnie. Just then, Lonnie spotted the boy in the crowd. She spoke again, shyly, madam. Could he stay too? If he goes back, he'll just be beaten again. The Duchess readily agreed to such a small request. Immediately, murmurs erupted throughout the crowd. A personal maid was a position typically held by experienced senior servants, and was incredibly lucky. Led by the dark-haired maid, the dismissed servants all knelt down, begging Lonnie for another chance. EUs was having none of it. He drew his sword and rested it on the maid's shoulder. Enough. You should be grateful you're only being dismissed. He ordered the guards to remove the rest of the servants, then turned and smiled at Lonnie, inviting her to return inside, and, watching them, looked like she was witnessing a dream come true. Poor Andy, meanwhile, was left forgotten in the corner. I'm glad that's settled. Are you going somewhere, young master? My holiday is almost over. I'm returning to the academy tomorrow. I wanted to leave early so I wouldn't be rushed. Alarm bells went off in Lonnie's head. EUs, seeming to sense her concern, joked, don't you want me to stay? I could just not go. The girl from the orphanage finally called him brother. The young master was about to return to the academy. Lonnie suddenly felt a pang of sadness. Seeing this, the boy pulled out a heart-shaped candy. Then, leaning in close, he teased, don't you want me to stay? I could just not go. Lonnie blushed, flustered. How could I possibly ask you to stay? You have to go back. EUs gently patted her head, telling her to wait for him there. Just then, Andy ran over, a look of mock distress on his face. He grabbed Lonnie's arm, scolding EUs. Lonnie is my sister. You can't steal her away. EUs feigned hurt. You used to chase after me saying you like me best. All right, you two play nice. I'm off now. Lonnie thought EUs was leaving for the academy right then, but he actually intended to practice his swordsmanship before dinner. Andy's eyes lit up at the mention of sword practice. Lonnie, equally eager, mustered her courage. Could I attend to you, young master? Bring you water, or something? EUs firmly refused. I don't need anyone to attend to me. You can just watch as my little sister. Lonnie happily agreed, but out of habit, called him young master. This gave the mischievous EUs an idea. Andy, sensing the shift, reminded her, you have to call him brother. He waited expectantly, but Lonnie struggled to say the word. Seeing her hesitation, the two boys playfully turned to leave. Finally, Lonnie blurted out, brother, take me with you. This simple phrase warmed both boys' hearts. The three of them set off happily for the training grounds. Soon, EUs began his training. Although Lonnie knew nothing about swordsmanship, she was thoroughly impressed. Brother is so amazing, she thought. Suddenly, Andy popped up beside her. Even if he's amazing, you can't fall for him, he declared, brandishing his own wooden sword. Lonnie is my sister. Lonnie played along. He's so cool. Are you both going to be knights when you grow up? We're going to inherit the family, EUs explained. To become the head of the family, you need to be recognized by the sacred relic. Our family's sacred relic is the Spear of Ares. Swordsmanship is just the most basic requirement, so we have to keep training. With that, EUs went to put away his sword. The usually cheerful Andy suddenly looked downcast. He believed his brother would soon resonate with the sacred relic. Everyone always had such high expectations for EUs. Compared to his brother, Andy felt his own talent was mediocre. He wasn't as carefree as he appeared. Just then, Sir Katz, the head of security, arrived. Lonnie offered a polite curtsy, instantly charming the hardened knight. He had brought Andy a new playmate. It was Levin, the boy who had been beaten. Here we go, 3 boys and 1 girl, a sweet and doting scene. The Duke's second son had a new playmate, but he clearly wasn't happy. Having Lonnie was enough for him. But when Levin explained he was there to be a playmate and sparring partner, Andy's attitude changed instantly. So, you want to learn swordsmanship? You should have said so. I'll teach you specially. Who's teaching who? EU's challenged, amused by his younger brother's bravado. Of course, I'm teaching him. I'm a better teacher than you are. You're just good yourself. You don't know how to teach. EU's, with a straight face, flicked Andy hard on the forehead, sending him tumbling to the ground. The 2 brothers continued to playfully spar. Levin, observing the scene, led Lonnie to a nearby bench. Katz watched the 4 children with a warm, paternal smile. Soon, it was time for EU's to leave for the academy. Lonnie began to cry. EU's gently wiped her tears with his handkerchief. "Be good while I'm gone," he said. "I'll be back soon." Later, Lonnie sat alone in her room, still feeling sad, and entered carrying a plate of sweets. "Have some of these. They'll cheer you up." As expected, the little girl's mood brightened instantly. She began to eat happily. "Young master, EU's said you like this kind of chocolate." Lonnie felt much better now. Seeing and Lonnie felt truly at ease. Hesitantly, she asked, "Why are you so kind to me?" and paused for a moment. She warmly expressed her fondness for Lonnie. "When I first saw you," she said, "you reminded me of my little sister. She was a sweet child just like you. But I hope you don't end up like her. Because heaven takes good children too soon," and murmured, a shadow passing over her face. Lonnie felt a pang of understanding, tears welling in her eyes. "I had a friend, a very good child, who passed away very young," she confided. "That's why I want to be a doctor, to help children like that." Lonnie was touched by Anne's kindness and encouraged her to start studying hard right away. Yet in the next moment, she pointed to the door and echoed the Duke's words, "Go on, get outside and play." For children, playing is the best way to learn. Meanwhile, the Duke observed Lonnie, a thoughtful expression on his face. They had decided to adopt her. But before they could proceed, they needed to determine if her birth parents were still alive. According to the orphanage director, the person who entrusted Lonnie to their care had described her as a child of noble birth, someone to be cherished and protected. So, who was Lonnie truly? The little girl from the orphanage finally began her lessons. Just a few days prior, the Duchess had asked her friend, Viscountess Prolin, to tutor Lonnie. She requested that the lessons proceed at a slow pace, so as not to discourage the child while also allowing plenty of time for outdoor play. However, Lonnie was a dedicated student, and her enthusiasm for learning was evident. She diligently copied the letters her tutor wrote, her adorable concentration captivating. When the tutor was about to teach her how to write other people's names, Lonnie blushed and asked if she could learn to write Euse's name first. The tutor readily agreed and wrote out his full name. Lonnie stared at the paper, her heart fluttering like a love-struck maiden. The tutor, recognizing the telltale signs of a budding crush, couldn't help but think that with the Duchess planning to adopt Lonnie, their path might be a little complicated. Soon, the day arrived for Lonnie's first outing. The maids told her they were going shopping for Andy. Lonnie was thrilled at the prospect, and so was Anne. But Anne's excitement stemmed from the opportunity to indulge in a delightful dressing-up session. Why? Because it's your first time going out, a momentous occasion. I have so many outfits I want you to try. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. Let's begin. A while later, the Duke, Duchess, and Andy arrived at the entrance, waiting, and had just finished dressing Lonnie. Andy, unable to contain his curiosity, rushed inside. The moment he saw Lonnie, everyone gasped. She was utterly adorable. "Lolo is always cute," the Duchess exclaimed, "but today, she's even cuter." Lonnie beamed and thanked Anne. Andy, quoting a line he'd recently learned from a novel, declared, "My sister. I won't give her to anyone." Everyone laughed, and the Duke scooped Lonnie into his arms. The four of them set off towards the village. Along the way, Lonnie was speechless, mesmerized by the sights around her. Andy, puffing out his chest, promised there were many more exciting things to come. Lonnie, genuinely enthralled, agreed. The Duke, observing their interaction, was pleased. The three of them exchanged knowing glances. The outing had been the Duchess's idea. There wasn't a single thing in the mansion that belonged to Lonnie. Everything she used had been prepared for their future daughter. That's why the servants assumed Lonnie wouldn't be staying long. So, this trip was specifically for buying things for Lonnie. But the girl was far too cautious. So to prevent her from refusing, they pretended it was a shopping trip for Andy. They planned to buy her a mountain of things under the guise of finding matching outfits. So far, everything was going according to plan. On her first outing, ostensibly to buy clothes for her brother, Lonnie found herself the center of attention. Soon, she was surrounded by a pile of clothes and accessories. The sheer volume startled her. The Duke intervened, stopping Andy and the Duchess, telling them they were overwhelming Lolo. Then, he pulled out a dress he had chosen and, with a perfectly straight face, declared that Lolo preferred more feminine attire. Lonnie, holding a hair ribbon, was completely bewildered, unsure what was happening. The Duchess, feigning concern, asked if she didn't like anything. Lonnie finally voiced her confusion. "Weren't we buying things for Andy? This doesn't seem like something he would wear." Overhearing this, Andy quickly explained, "We're always together, so anything that looks good on Lolo, I like too." To everyone's surprise, Lonnie picked up a colorful bow and declared that it looked perfect for him. Andy's face fell, but he gamely agreed. Seeing this, the Duke put his own plan into action. Since Andy has found something he likes, he said, "Let's find something for Lolo too." Lonnie felt she already had plenty and tried to refuse. Andy immediately clung to her, exclaiming, "I want matching sibling outfits with Lolo. That way, everyone will know Lolo is my sister." Even so, Lonnie still looked hesitant. At this, the Duke simply instructed them to close down the entire shop. "Since we don't know what you like," he declared, "this is the only way. If you tell us what you like, then we'll buy that." Lonnie was genuinely taken aback by this extravagant gesture, but she remained silent, her head bowed. Perceptive Andy noticed his sister kept glancing at a pair of shoes and spoke up for her. Meeting the expectant gazes of the three adults, Lonnie bravely admitted her fondness for the shoes. However, the Duke secretly told the shopkeeper, "Wrap up every outfit that matches these shoes. Don't let the child know." The shopkeeper silently celebrated their sudden windfall. Soon, Lonnie emerged, wearing her new shoes, and the group headed towards the bustling marketplace. The dazzling array of goods was captivating. Andy excitedly pulled Lonnie along, but they nearly collided with a speeding carriage. Thankfully, it only passed close by, and neither of them was hurt. The Duke angrily ordered Andy, "If you run off again, you're going straight back to the mansion." Just then, however, Lonnie's hair ribbon blew away in the wind. She immediately chased after it. The three adults, preoccupied, didn't notice. The little girl pursued the ribbon into a narrow alley. Suddenly, a boy's voice called out from behind her, "Are you looking for this?" It was this blonde boy who had suddenly appeared. The girl, chasing her ribbon at what felt like 100 kilometers an hour, had encountered a blonde-haired boy. He was so adorable that she stared captivated. The boy, teasingly, held the ribbon high above his head. Lonnie's bewildered expression made him chuckle. "Here you go." Seeing Lonnie hesitate, the boy teased her further. "Are you not taking it because you want to stay with me a little longer?" Lonnie, flustered, snatched the ribbon. "Ha, I'm just kidding," he said. "Miss Lonnie," he added, "I was just reminded of my own little sister." It was clear the boy knew her. Since Lonnie hadn't introduced herself, the boy, his gaze flickering, didn't elaborate. He simply pointed her in the direction she needed to go and then vanished. Though puzzled by the boy's identity, Lonnie hurried back. The Duke, spotting her, rushed forward, checking for injuries. The Duchess embraced her, expressing her concern, and he burst into tears, blaming himself for not protecting her better. Lonnie was deeply touched by this genuine display of affection. Back at the mansion, and asked her how her first outing had been. Lonnie happily showed off the new shoes the Duke had bought her, and recounted her encounter with the blonde boy, and suggested he might have been a fairy. Legend says that when a child is in trouble, a fairy will appear to help them. Innocent Lonnie immediately believed it. After all, the boy did look like a fairy. Just then, she remembered Euse, thinking that Euse was still more handsome. At that moment, the butler knocked and entered, announcing visitors who wished to see Lonnie. It was the Crown Prince Maris and his family. Princess Bianca asked skeptically, "Is that child really cuter than me?" Andy, brimming with pride, replied, "Of course. You'll be shocked when you see her." The princess still looked unconvinced. However, the moment she saw Lonnie, she rushed over, exclaiming, "Oh my goodness, are you a doll? Or an angel? Even your hand are like a baby's. How is that possible? I was this small and cute once too." In reality, she was only a year older than Lonnie. "Your name is Lolo, right? You can call me BB." Lonnie was completely bewildered. The butler explained that the visitors were the crown prince's family, and the girl before her was a real princess. How incredible. The two children began vying for Lonnie's attention. Just then, the prince, who had been absent until now, arrived. The boy was the same fairy Lonnie had met in the alley earlier that day. "Miss Lonnie," he said, "you can call me Henry." The girl, with her undeniable charm, had captured the hearts of both the princess and the prince. She had simply drawn a cartoon portrait, and the princess was utterly delighted, praising both the drawing and the artist's cuteness. Shy Lonnie, mustering her courage, complimented the princess in return. The two continued their exchange of compliments. Their tutor, observing their interaction, was pleased. Although the princess's presence had slowed down the lesson considerably, Lonnie's face was radiant with smiles. Then, Lonnie noticed the doll in the princess's lap. After receiving permission, Lonnie held the doll, stroking its soft, lifelike features. She couldn't put it down. "Doesn't Lonnie have any dolls?" Bianca asked. "Have the Duke buy you some. He could buy you 100. Though Lonnie adored the doll, she was too shy to ask for one. Bianca offered to speak to the Duke on her behalf, but Lonnie quickly and vehemently refused. Just then, Prince Henry knocked and entered, feigning a serious tone as he scolded Bianca for interrupting Lonnie's lessons. He, however, was doing the exact same thing. The tutor sighed inwardly, realizing the lesson was hopelessly lost for the day. Lonnie, slightly flustered, rose to curtsy. Henry, however, smiled and told her to relax, acting as if they were old friends. Despite his casual demeanor, his ears were bright red. Bianca instantly understood. She leaned in with a mischievous grin. It was clear her brother had fallen head over heels. Only Lonnie, oblivious, continued to smile innocently. It turned out Henry had already heard about Lonnie from Andy's letters. He just hadn't expected her to be even more adorable in person. "I hear you're having a music lesson." "Yes," Lonnie replied. "I'm learning musical notes." "To learn well," Henry suggested, "you need to listen to lots of good music. Perhaps I can help you with that." Lonnie was enthusiastic about the idea. Bianca proudly declared her brother was an exceptional pianist. As if on cue, the melodious sound of the piano filled the room. It was so beautiful it made Lonnie's heart flutter. Her romantic mind immediately drifted to use. Yet, something felt different. Before she could fully process the feeling, the music ended. The prince generously offered to send his own music tutor to teach Lonnie. "He's been teaching Bianca for years," he explained, "and I'm sure he'll be a great help to you." However, he added, "It's not free." Just then, Andy burst through the door and witnessed the scene. "Henry," he exclaimed, "how could you touch Lonnie's face without my permission?" "Only I could touch Lonnie's face." Their bickering amused Bianca. The three children then began playfully vying for Lonnie's attention. That evening, Lonnie went to tell the Duchess about Henry's offer of a music tutor, but overheard their conversation. She learned the royal family's divine power was waning, and they might target the crown prince. The culprit, it seemed, was Countess Castor. A strange feeling washed over Lonnie. She opened the door and asked, "Who is Countess Castor?" Although she was an orphan with no known family, the mere mention of Countess Castor caused a pang of sadness in her heart. Curious, she asked who Castor was, and received an unexpected answer. "She's the emperor's mistress," the Duchess explained, "and the true power behind the throne. She'll stop at nothing to make her son the crown prince." Not wanting to expose Lonnie to such negativity so young, the Duchess quickly changed the subject. "What did you want to tell me, dear?" "Oh, right," Lonnie remembered. "Prince Henry offered to send his music tutor to teach me. He said the tutor taught the princess too." "Did he mention a name?" "I think it started with an I," Lonnie replied. "Unfortunately, too many names began with I, so this crucial piece of information was accidentally overlooked." The next day, Andy and Henry engaged in a duel. They made a wager on the outcome of the match. After several rounds, Andy was defeated. Levin thoughtfully brought them towels. Reflecting on their time together, Andy realized Henry was actually a kind person. Just then, Lonnie and Bianca arrived. Everyone greeted them warmly. Andy noticed Levin's eyes light up with excitement. Does he like Lonnie? Andy wondered. Absolutely not. Lonnie is my sister. He quickly rushed forward to block Levin's view. Noticing Lonnie seemed a little down, he decided to show off his recent training progress. He assumed a sword-fighting stance, then swung with all his might. The force of his swing sent fallen leaves swirling into the air. Lonnie praised his skill, then quickly turned to Bianca to ask her opinion. Bianca's expression clearly showed she was impressed. Andy, beaming, ran towards Lonnie, but Henry intercepted him. "Have you forgotten our bet?" he asked. "I have the right to touch Lonnie's face today." And he realized their duel had been about this all along. He felt a pang of embarrassment, but tried to weasel his way out. "Lonnie's face belongs to Lonnie," he argued. "Only Lonnie can decide who touches it. Didn't you say yesterday you needed my permission?" Henry countered. "Lonnie's face is Lonnie's. Only Lonnie can decide who touches it. Didn't you say yesterday you needed my permission? I don't care about what we just said. That's all invalid now. Lonnie, you tell us. Whose face is yours?" Faced with the expectant gazes of the three, who would Lonnie choose? She was simply too adorable, and three handsome boys were vying for the privilege of touching her cheek. Suddenly put on the spot, Lonnie became incredibly nervous. Henry smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry. If you don't want me to, I absolutely won't." And he was confident Lonnie would choose him. After all, he was her brother. Henry also believed he'd be chosen, having always presented a dashing image. Even Levin couldn't help but feel a flicker of anticipation. The scene resembled an ancient emperor choosing a concubine. Bianca, watching from the side, was thrilled. This was the kind of romantic drama everyone loved to witness. Just then, the Duke appeared. The knights were about to arrive for training, so they needed to return to the mansion. He was Lonnie's unexpected rescuer. Lonnie tugged on the Duke's trousers, mustering her courage. "Please be the master of my cheeks," she declared. "You can touch my face anytime, Duke." Andy and Henry were instantly crestfallen. Unaware of the situation, the Duke chuckled and scooped her up. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm glad you chose me." With that, the two walked off, chatting and laughing. Bianca tried to console her brother, suggesting he shouldn't be discouraged, as the Duke was undeniably more handsome. This, however, did little to comfort Henry. Soon, the day of departure arrived. The group bid each other farewell with lingering reluctance. Bianca was puzzled. They would see each other again, so why the sadness? Lonnie, full of hope, sought confirmation from Bianca. "You mean we can meet again, right? Of course, if you're busy, Princess, it's okay if we don't. I really enjoyed my time with you." Bianca happily hugged her. "We're friends now," she declared. "We must meet often and play together." Henry smiled at the scene. Andy, still somewhat childish, thought Henry was still coveting Lonnie's cheeks. But in truth, Henry coveted Lonnie herself. He took out a carefully prepared pink ribbon and placed it in Lonnie's hand. He promised a better gift next time they met. Then, the carriage departed. Lonnie felt a pang of sadness. The Duchess comforted her, assuring her they would meet again soon. For the first time, Lonnie openly expressed her feelings, admitting how much she would miss the princess and the prince. "It's all right. If you miss the princess, just tell me, and we'll go visit her together." Lonnie felt grateful to have found such a wonderful family. She rose and curtsied, thanking them for making her days so happy. The Duke, Duchess, and Andy were charmed by her sweetness. The Duchess felt her sister was right. Lonnie might truly possess a divine power that made everyone adore her. Just then, the butler rushed in with urgent news. A woman was at the gate, claiming to be Lonnie's birth mother. The Duke was planning to adopt the girl he'd brought from the orphanage. But now, a woman claiming to be her mother had appeared. The Duke sensed something was amiss. The Duchess was deeply distressed. If the woman had unavoidable circumstances, Lonnie might understand and leave with her mother. The thought broke her heart. The Duke, seeing his wife's worry, reminded her they couldn't be sure of the woman's identity yet. They would wait until they met her. He instructed his staff to investigate and uncover the truth while he met with the woman. Meanwhile, the Duchess went to Lonnie's room, intending to speak with her privately. After sending Andy out, she asked Lonnie if she remembered her mother's face. Learning that Lonnie was too young to remember, the Duchess gently broke the news of her mother's arrival. The unexpected information left Lonnie reeling. However, they still needed to confirm the woman's claim. "Do you have any other name besides the one you used at the orphanage?" Lonnie couldn't recall, only remembering that her mother had taken her to the orphanage. Meanwhile, the Duke was in the drawing room. The woman introduced herself as Louisa Bennet. She explained that Lonnie's original name was Chloe Leroy, a name given by her deceased husband. Due to extreme hardship, she had placed Lonnie in the orphanage, giving her a similar name, Lonnie. She had believed the orphanage was a reliable place, but the headmistress proved to be cruel. Later, when she returned to retrieve her child, she was shocked to hear Lonnie had been taken away. A person of your stature to adopt a child born of someone as lowly as me, and even willing to support them. I am truly grateful. The woman's expression was suspicious. The Duke, however, considered her similar hair color to Lonnie's, and the fact she knew which orphanage Lonnie was from. He thought it was indeed possible she was Lonnie's birth mother. But the fact she only appeared after hearing the Duke was supporting the child seemed opportunistic. The Duke considered that even if she were the birth mother, he wasn't obligated to return Lonnie. However, if Lonnie wanted to live with her mother, he wouldn't stand in their way. Just then, the Duchess entered with Lonnie. The woman immediately rushed forward and embraced the child. Lonnie froze, startled. This woman, appearing out of nowhere, claiming to be the Duke's adopted daughter's mother, had instantly rushed to hug her. Lonnie remained frozen in place. Seeing this, the Duchess quickly pulled the woman away. Can't you see you frightened her? Even if you're her mother, please don't touch her so abruptly. The Duke then gently asked Lonnie if the name Chloe Leroy meant anything to her. Lonnie, however, couldn't recall anything. The woman began to sob, offering Lonnie a heartfelt apology. I'm sorry, my dear. Mother came too late. Lonnie had expected to be happy seeing her mother, but the feeling was the same as when the orphanage headmistress stood before her, terrifying. The Duke settled them in the guest room and told a frightened Lonnie to go and rest. Lonnie's mind raced with the sadness of leaving. Andy, hearing the news, rushed to her. Are you really leaving? If she really is your mother, will you leave here and go back with her? Lonnie didn't know how to answer. The next moment, Sir Cat scooped Andy up. It was still training time, and Andy had snuck away. Andy struggled in Cat's grip, begging Lonnie not to leave. This only frightened Lonnie more. If she left, she would never see Andy, her brother, the Duke and Duchess, and her tutor and EUs again. The thought brought tears to her eyes, and only wished for her happiness, telling her to follow her heart. Lonnie realized she only felt sadness at leaving, not any joy at the thought of her mother. In fact, the idea of living with this woman made her feel dizzy and tremble. Just then, Levin appeared. He had been sent by the Duke to protect her. Lonnie tried to decline, saying she might be leaving soon, but Levin was resolute. He would follow Lonnie wherever she went. Meanwhile, in the guest room, the woman's maid marveled at the mansion's luxury. Louisa let out a sinister chuckle. It seems the child remembers nothing of her past. She doesn't even remember her own mother. How pathetic. I'll just have to make her accept me as her mother, won't I? Was she truly Lonnie's mother? This woman, with her pink hair, claimed to be the Duke's adopted daughter's birth mother. Yet just days before, she had visited the orphanage, befriending the children with candy and subtly inquiring about Lonnie. Learning that Lonnie often hid alone, she assumed it was to conceal her true gender. Soon, the first formal dinner began. The woman, having never seen such a feast, disregarded etiquette and devoured the food like a starving animal. Andy, as always, thoughtfully cut Lonnie's favorite foods for her. The Duke offered her the newest dishes, and the Duchess had prepared her favorite dessert. The woman, realizing her gaffe, quickly pushed the food towards Lonnie, explaining she'd simply never tasted such delicious food before. She promised to make it up to Lonnie later. These words saddened the Duke and Duchess, who felt they were about to lose her. Just then, the butler arrived with urgent news. Only the three of them remained in the vast dining hall. Andy, fearing Lonnie's imminent departure, wanted to spend as much time playing with her as possible. He grabbed her hand and pulled her outside. Their so-called mother continued to gorge herself, not sparing Lonnie a single glance. Meanwhile, the Duke reviewed the recent reports. The woman's identity matched her claims. Strangely, the report mentioned she had visited the orphanage, claiming she wanted to adopt a child. It was highly likely she used adoption as a pretext to gather information about Lonnie. The headmistress had mentioned the person who left Lonnie had claimed the child was of noble birth. Yet, the woman repeatedly referred to herself as lowly. The Duke was consumed with guilt. He shouldn't have rushed the meeting. In the end, it was Lonnie who was hurt. Suddenly, he remembered the children were still with the woman. He immediately ordered the knights to apprehend her. Meanwhile, the woman disguised as a maid was furious at having missed the Duke's breakfast. However, all she needed to do now was coax Lonnie away. It turned out she was Bess, the sister of the maid previously dismissed for mistreating Lonnie. The two venomous sisters, seeking revenge, had hatched a plan. They found Louisa, who bore a resemblance to Lonnie's mother, and paid her handsomely to play the part. Bess planned to abandon Lonnie in a remote orphanage after securing a large sum of money. However, she ran into guards searching the mansion. It was clear the Duke had discovered something. Just then, Louisa appeared, still raving about the delicious breakfast. Bess immediately grabbed her and fled. The Duke, informed of their escape, grimly ordered an intensified search. A commoner couldn't possibly be so familiar with the mansion's layout. There had to be an accomplice within the Duke's household. These words sent chills down the two women's spines. They decided to make their move on Lonnie. Lonnie was playing on the lawn. Andy was heartbroken at the thought of his sister leaving. Yet, he felt he couldn't stop her from reuniting with her birth mother. "You can come back and visit any time. I'll be waiting for you." The two embraced, tears streaming down their faces. Suddenly, the two scheming women appeared. Louisa, feigning a smile, extended her arms towards Lonnie. "Chloe Leroy, come to mother." The woman, having impersonated the Duke's adopted daughter's mother for financial gain, now resorted to playing the emotional card after being exposed. Andy, though reluctant, felt he couldn't prevent their reunion. After a few parting words, he turned to leave. Seeing Lonnie's hesitation, the woman immediately employed a sob story. "I know I don't deserve to be called a mother, but can you give me another chance? I promise I'll do my best to make it up to you." Lonnie was deeply moved. Tearfully, she rushed into the woman's arms. But the moment she touched her, she felt a sharp, tingling pain like a pinprick. Black smoke emanated from behind the woman. Frightened, Lonnie recoiled. The sound of the search party drew closer. The woman's expression turned menacing. Just as she was about to grab Lonnie, Levin appeared, shielding the girl. Andy, who had just left, returned to see what was happening. The woman was quickly apprehended by the knights. The Duke, his heart aching, held Lonnie close, whispering it was just a bad dream. "Get some sleep. Everything will be all right." The two women continued to bicker, each blaming the other. Lonnie finally broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. That night, she developed a high fever. The Duke and Duchess immediately summoned the family doctor. The Duchess was heartbroken, tears welling in her eyes. Lonnie, witnessing this, felt a warmth spread through her. Andy must be worried about her too, and EUs as well. As these thoughts drifted through her mind, she fell asleep. When she opened her eyes again, she was astonished to see EUs, who had been away studying, standing before her. The girl sat up in shock. EUs, having learned of Lonnie's ordeal from the Duchess's letter, had rushed back. He brought a bowl of porridge and said, "You must be weak. Let me feed you." Lonnie, embarrassed, insisted she had recovered and could eat by herself. Though her mother had been a fraud, she felt fortunate to be surrounded by so many kind people. Lonnie quickly regained her health. They all resumed their playful games as before. EUs, having finished his sword practice, joined them. This time, it was his turn to seek. Andy, pulling Levin along, vanished in a flash. Lonnie, unsure what to do, remembered Levin hiding under the sofa earlier and quickly crawled beneath it. However, her dress got caught. EUs, turning around, spotted Lonnie. He immediately went to her aid, untangling her dress. Her adorable predicament made him chuckle. Lonnie was so embarrassed, tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm sorry," EUs chuckled. "You're just too cute." Hearing her brother EU's praise made Lonnie's heart flutter. Gathering her courage, she declared, "Brother EUs, I really like you." The shy girl confessed loudly to her brother. EUs gently stroked her head, affectionately echoing her sentiment. Andy and Levin, who had already hidden, heard Lonnie's loud declaration and rushed out. However, due to the rules of the game, they were caught red-handed. Naive Andy was preoccupied with arguing with EUs about the situation. Meanwhile, perceptive Levin noticed Lonnie's crestfallen expression. He quickly reached out to help her up. Following her gaze, he discovered a secret: Lonnie's affection for EUs. Though a pang of sadness struck his heart, as long as Lonnie was happy, he would be content. However, happy days always seem to fly by. EUs eventually had to return to the academy to continue his studies. Lonnie was utterly dejected. She couldn't even bring herself to eat her beloved cupcakes. The Duchess, assuming she hadn't fully recovered, worriedly suggested she go back to rest. At this, Lonnie quickly began devouring the cupcakes. "I'm fine. The cupcakes are delicious." The Duke and Duchess apologized again for the recent incident. "We are so sorry you had to go through that. We want to be a real family to you. You can rely on us, always. So, would you consider becoming our daughter?" Lonnie's heart was in turmoil. She knew the Duke and Duchess were good people. Meeting them felt like a blessing. Staying with them promised a lifetime of happiness. But after careful consideration, she declined. I'm sorry, I still want to wait for my mother. Even though I can't remember her face or why she left me at the orphanage, I want to see her again. I need to understand. The Duke and Duchess expressed their understanding, embracing Lonnie warmly. Don't apologize. Tell us when you're ready. Lonnie basked in the Duchess's comforting embrace. A few days later, the Duchess suggested holding a tea party. After all, Lonnie didn't have many friends her own age. But Lonnie, fearing another incident like the one with Lydia, where Andy had to defend her, hesitated. The Duchess reassured her that she could invite whomever she wished, like Princess Bianca. A flicker of hope sparked within Lonnie. Perhaps she could find a kind friend like the princess. Resolutely, she agreed to the tea party. The day of the tea party arrived quickly. Lonnie was dressed impeccably, looking even more adorable than usual. With a mixture of nervousness and excitement, she wondered if she would make any friends today. Many viewers ask where to watch adorable Lonnie. Look for this. Open it and fully type Lolo Watch Korean Comics. Click to watch for free. The Duchess organized a tea party for the girl she had adopted, never imagining it would plunge the child into a storm. Today was the day of the tea party. The venue was exquisitely decorated. Lonnie could hardly believe how grand it was. She sincerely thanked the Duchess. Just then, Levin appeared. He too was dressed smartly, looking even more handsome than usual. The Duchess had initially wanted to choose a lively, cheerful girl as a companion, but the Duke thought Levin would be a better choice. Not only was he familiar with Lonnie, but he also had experience with social events. Levin's presence did indeed ease Lonnie's nerves. Suddenly, a maid delivered a letter. It turned out Princess Bianca had come down with a high fever the previous day. Though she had been looking forward to the meeting, she was unable to attend. The Duchess was worried, but the tea party had already begun. Canceling it now was impossible. Lonnie felt a pang of apprehension, but she didn't want to disappoint the Duchess. So, she bravely declared that she would be fine, especially with Levin there. Relieved, the Duchess assured her that she could leave at any time if she felt uncomfortable. And so, the tea party began. The guests were Agnes from the Earl's house and Sylvia from a Viscount's house. After introductions were made, the Duchess greeted them and then excused herself. The three children had barely settled in when Agnes began expressing her envy. I heard the Duke's household is sponsoring you. Even your dress is so beautiful. Sylvia, however, abruptly changed the subject to the tea they were drinking. Isn't this the finest tea from Mount Ballon? She remarked. Lonnie, clearly unfamiliar with such distinctions, drew Sylvia's immediate disapproval. A declining noble enjoying such fine things. How unfair. Then, noticing Levin, she posed a deliberately pointed question. Is he a servant the Duke assigned to you? Did you choose him because he's handsome? Lonnie stammered, unsure how to explain. Levin wasn't her playmate, after all. Sylvia smirked, sensing an opening. Or is there a relationship between you two that we're not supposed to know about? Before she could continue, Levin intervened. I apologize, he said smoothly, for interrupting. But this young lady is my chosen companion. The orphan girl, facing down a spiteful Viscount's daughter at her first noble tea party, found herself unexpectedly defended. Levin, stepping forward with an air of authority, declared, I've decided to devote myself entirely to her. Then, turning to the flustered Lonnie, he offered a reassuring smile. Sylvia, thwarted, seethed with jealousy. Why would such a remarkable boy be her companion? She fumed. My own attendant is so dull. Tell me, how much are you worth? She demanded of Levin. I can offer you more. Levin looked at her as if she were a fool. Lonnie rushed to explain, Levin isn't like that. But Sylvia was clearly not ready to give up. Just then, Lady Rolana of the Duke's household arrived. She was the only daughter of the Alicia family, one of the Empire's 3 Grand Dukes. Even at her young age, she exuded an air of nobility. Rumors even suggested she was destined to become the queen of social circles. The Duchess had invited her out of necessity, unsure whether it would be a blessing or a curse for Lonnie. Lonnie offered Rolana a cream puff. To her relief, Rolana accepted. This gave Lonnie a small boost of confidence. Perhaps they could even become friends. Sylvia's anger intensified. Why does she get to invite the esteemed Lady Rolana? Just then, Agnes spoke up. My mother heard from Marquis Rodden, she began, that the Duke brought you back for certain reasons. He wouldn't say what, though. So what is it? Lonnie knew her orphan status was being concealed so she couldn't reveal the truth. But the malicious Sylvia jumped in, insinuating that the Duke had taken Lonnie in due to inappropriate pedophilic tendencies. Lonnie sensed a disturbingly familiar air about Sylvia, reminiscent of the woman who had pretended to be her mother. "Don't you know Lonnie?" Sylvia pressed. "How could you not know? He's clearly close enough to you to host a tea party like this." Though Lonnie didn't understand the specifics of their insinuations, she knew they were insulting the Duke. She wouldn't allow it. Gathering her courage, she declared firmly, "Stop it, Sylvia. The Duke isn't like that." Until now, Lady Rowlanna had remained silent. Suddenly, she laughed. "How amusing," she said. "Why stop her? A tea party without a little drama would be so dull." The timid girl, bravely defending the Duke, proclaimed him a good man, forbidding Sylvia from speaking ill of him. Yet, Lady Rowlanna found this entertaining, gesturing for Sylvia to continue. Sylvia, delighted, saw this as a perfect opportunity to ingratiate herself with the Duke's daughter and simultaneously take down the haughty Lonnie. "I heard the Duke is fond of children," she continued, "which is why he brings them back under the guise of sponsorship. I also heard those children disappeared." Lonnie, furious, retorted, "The Duke is absolutely not like that." Sylvia feigned innocence, hoping to garner sympathy. Unexpectedly, Rowlanna interjected. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. The Duke would never do such a thing. Besides," she added, "Marquis Rawdon's wife wouldn't spread such rumors lightly." Rowlanna knew about the Duke's refusal to lend money to Marquis Rawdon's wife. She hadn't realized it would lead to such slander. Given the circumstances, Sylvia and Agnes owed Lonnie an apology. Agnes immediately offered a sincere apology. Sylvia, however, remained indignant until prompted again by Rowlanna. Grudgingly, she offered a perfunctory apology. Lonnie finally brightened. If you could have seen the Duke," Lonnie gushed, "you'd like him too. He seemed a little scary at first, but he's actually very kind." Agnes beamed, her earlier animosity forgotten. "I hope I can visit your home, Lonnie," she said, "and see young Master Euse again. If you invite us," she continued, her excitement bubbling over, "I'll invite you to mine. We can all play together." The three girls linked pinkies, sealing their newfound friendship. Lonnie was overjoyed. Lady Rowlanna, with her grace and kindness, reminded her of Princess Bianca. Both were such wonderful people. In her innocent heart, Lonnie held no grudge against Sylvia. When Sylvia, eager to please Lady Rowlanna, invited Lonnie to join their little group, Lonnie agreed with a smile, despite a lingering unease. But as they clasped hands, Lady Rowlanna's expression shifted, a flicker of something unsettling in her eyes that startled Lonnie. Sylvia, though outwardly cheerful as she joined the circle, inwardly blamed Lonnie for the strange look she'd received. As Sylvia placed her hand on top of the stack, Lonnie felt a sudden, sharp prickle of pain. An awkward silence descended upon the group. What had just happened? The girl adopted from the orphanage by the Duke, could she possess royal blood? The first tea party finally came to an end. Lonnie, bubbling with excitement, told Andy about her three new friends. Lady Rowlanna was perfect in every way. Agnes was delightfully curious, and Sylvia? Lonnie hesitated. There was something odd about Sylvia, an unsettling aura. She dismissed it, assuming Sylvia was simply in a bad mood. Not wanting to worry Andy, Lonnie kept the unpleasant parts of the tea party to herself. Later, as she prepared for bed, a sudden wave of pain washed over her, and she collapsed unconscious. A high fever quickly followed. Everyone gathered anxiously at her bedside. Andy, distraught, sobbed, "I can't live without Lonnie. If you cure Lonnie," he pleaded with the family doctor, "I'll do anything." The doctor, amused by the boy's earnestness, teased, "Anything. Would you let Miss Lonnie become my little sister and come live with me?" Seeing Andy's genuine alarm, the doctor quickly reassured him. "I'm just joking," he said. "The young lady will be fine. She's just perhaps not quite ready for tea parties yet." The Duchess felt a pang of guilt. Perhaps she had been too hasty. Lonnie had fallen ill after the incident with the imposter mother as well. Lonnie seemed rather frail. The Duchess recalled her own childhood, when she, too, had experienced similar episodes of illness due to her divine powers. And the doctor had mentioned Lonnie's unusually rapid recovery. Could Lonnie also possess divine powers? If so, it would mean she was of royal lineage. By the next day, Lonnie had fully recovered. The two children played happily on the lawn. The Duchess appeared, suggesting an afternoon tea. To celebrate Lonnie's recovery, she then sent Andy away, determined to confirm whether Lonnie truly possessed divine powers. "My dear," she began, I have a question for you. Have you ever sensed a strange presence? The Duchess suspected the adopted girl might be of royal blood. She needed to know if Lonnie had divine powers. She asked if Lonnie had ever sensed an unfamiliar presence, particularly under unusual circumstances. Lonnie had indeed experienced such sensations. Fearful of worrying the Duke and Duchess, she initially hesitated. "It's nothing," she said. "I just wanted to make sure you weren't feeling unwell." Reassured by the Duchess's gentle tone, Lonnie confided in her. "It happened when I met the woman pretending to be my mother," she explained, and again with Sylvia. "Even though they were smiling, even though they acted kind, I felt strange. It even made me feel a little sick." This was a significant detail. However, this alone wasn't enough to confirm the presence of divine powers. Perhaps Lonnie was simply more sensitive than other children. The only way to be certain was to introduce divine power into Lonnie's body. But if their powers were of different types, they could clash, putting Lonnie in danger. The Duchess was unwilling to take that risk. There had to be a safer way. The next day, a servant delivered something from the Duke. Judging by the servant's expression, it wasn't what he'd expected. Just then, Lonnie appeared. The Duke, acting suspiciously, quickly hid the object and greeted Lonnie with a forced smile. "I've been so busy with work lately," he said. "I haven't had a chance to see you." Lonnie curtsied politely. "Good day, Your Grace," she said. "I trust you are well." The Duke's heart sank. Lonnie sounded so formal. Had she grown distant? Andy burst into laughter. Lonnie blushed crimson. With no one else around, her formal greeting had seemed perfectly appropriate. It was the etiquette she'd learned from Princess Bianca. Mortified by the misunderstanding, Lonnie looked to Andy for guidance. He patiently explained the proper way to greet family at home. The Duke found the whole scene utterly charming. "Where are you two off to?" he asked. Learning they were going to visit the princess and prince, the Duke smiled and told them to have fun. Suddenly, he remembered something urgent and grabbed Andy's arm. "Don't forget what happened last time," he said, referring to the incident where Prince Henry had kissed Lonnie's hand. Father and son exchanged a look of firm resolve. That absolutely could not happen again. Lonnie and Andy arrived at the palace gardens, where Princess Bianca had prepared cookies. She apologized for missing Lonnie's tea party. It was during this visit that Lonnie, surprisingly, learned about the existence of divine powers. Lonnie, not bothered in the slightest about the missed tea party, genuinely assured Bianca it was no problem. Andy, ever the gourmand, reached for a cookie, only to be stopped by Bianca. The two playful rivals bickered good-naturedly. Prince Henry inquired about the tea party and whether Lonnie had made any good friends. Lonnie, eager to share, excitedly told him about her three new friends, Rolana, Agnes, and Sylvia. She was so glad she'd attended. Bianca was surprised to hear that even Rolana, a lady-in-waiting, had been there. A tea party at the Duke's residence could have political implications. Henry noticed Lonnie's radiant smile. She seemed much more cheerful than before. "Lonnie, try this cookie," he offered. "It's delicious." Just as Lonnie reached for it, Andy snatched it away, remembering the last incident. He was determined to prevent Henry from getting close to Lonnie. The princess asked what game they wanted to play. After a moment of thought, Lonnie smiled and suggested playing house. Henry immediately seized the opportunity. "Lonnie, you be the mother, and I'll be the father," he declared. Andy, not to be outdone, insisted on being the father. The two boys bickered, refusing to yield. Lonnie, seeing the escalating argument, quickly intervened. "I have a great idea," she announced. To their surprise, she suggested Euse be the father. The boys continued to argue over who would be the older brother. Euse, meanwhile, was secretly delighted. "What are you all doing?" Bianca asked, amused. "Don't you know family members can't marry?" Lonnie, having grown up without family or friends, was unaware of this. She learned that, except for royalty, marrying half-siblings with the same father was permissible, but other familial relationships were forbidden. Bianca explained that in the age when divine powers were common, noble families would adopt children with such powers and arrange marriages within the family to inherit them. Laws were later established to prevent this practice. Lonnie was heartbroken. Becoming part of the Duke's family meant she couldn't marry Euse. "But how do you know if someone has divine powers?" Lonnie asked. Bianca, teasing Andy for his ignorance, took Lonnie's hand to demonstrate. "Like this," she said, channeling her divine power. "If you don't have any, you won't feel anything." The next moment, a tingling sensation, like a mild electric current, passed between their hands. Bianca was stunned. "Lonnie," she asked incredulously, "do you have divine powers?" The discovery of Lonnie's powers prompted Bianca to inform the Duchess immediately. The Duchess, already suspecting as much, realized the significance of the princess inadvertently channeling pure divine power into Lonnie, causing a resonance between them. This suggested Lonnie likely possessed the same royal divine power. The Duchess urged Lonnie to keep her powers a secret, explaining the reasons, which Lonnie, overwhelmed with joy, barely registered. She was thrilled to share this special ability with EUs, feeling closer to him than ever. She readily agreed to keep it secret and left the room, beaming. A few days later, Lonnie received an invitation from Agnes. Excited about the upcoming gathering, she pondered what gift to bring. Suddenly, a gust of wind snatched the invitation from her hand. Lonnie chased after it, finding herself unexpectedly at the entrance of a dark, ominous cave. Despite her fear, she bravely ventured inside. The space felt less like a basement and more like a solemn, almost sacred chamber. Suddenly, a sword materialized before her, emanating a powerful aura that seemed to beckon her. As Lonnie reached for it, she heard Euse's voice behind her. Lonnie recognized it instantly. It was the symbol of the Marquis of Rodden's house. So, the mastermind behind this was Lady Lydia. The girl had been caught in a premeditated kidnapping, and the one pulling the strings was the Duke's niece. Her pitiful appearance stirred a pang of guilt and fear in the kidnappers. After all, they were knights with their own code of honor. Moreover, the girl was under the patronage of the Mars family. If they were discovered, their lives would be forfeit. Lonnie asked in a tearful voice, "Could I please use the restroom?" Satisfied with a verbal warning, they relaxed their vigilance. Escape was impossible in her current situation. She looked around for something to write with, desperate to leave some kind of clue. Though terrified of pain, returning to her family was paramount. She bit the inside of her lip until it bled and pulled off her sock. Using her blood, she scrawled a few English letters on the sock, hoping the Duke would find it and understand. Alone in the carriage, Lonnie was heartbroken. She worried about the injured Levin and the knight uncles. She missed them terribly. Suddenly, the carriage lurched to a stop. A familiar voice near, "My, doesn't this look just perfect on you?" It was Lydia, as she'd feared. Malicious and cruel, the girl slapped Lonnie across the face without a word. The force of the blow startled even the knights. "That's the slap I couldn't give you before doubled. Now you don't have Andy to shield you, or brother EUs to coddle you. What are you going to do?" Lydia's laughter was manic, utterly unlike that of a child. Lonnie, the true victim in all of this, was being framed as the wrongdoer. Lydia continued her cruel taunts. "Don't expect your uncle to come looking for you, because you'll never see him again." Lonnie's heart plummeted. Are you going to kill me?" "I'm not that cruel," Lydia said, a chilling smile twisting her lips. "I'm just going to send you back where you belong." Lydia's sinister laughter sent a shiver down Lonnie's spine, evoking memories of a dark past. Who would come to save her? Meanwhile, the Duke had arrived at the forest with his men. Levin was consumed by guilt for failing to protect Lonnie, forgetting that he, too, was just a child. He was injured as well. "Your Grace," he began, "may I share my thoughts on this matter?" "What have you surmised?" the Duke asked. "Count Tilner's territory is a breeding ground for illegal activities. Slave trading is commonplace there. And the largest port, Mbach, is a hotbed for human trafficking. That location is certainly of interest," Levin concluded. The Duke found this information credible. He immediately dispatched men to Mbach. Just then, Andy found a clue Lonnie had left. The letters clearly pointed to the Marquis of Rodden's house. The Duke sent men to the Marquis's house to investigate and sent young Andy back to the residence. He then hurriedly set off with his men for the port. Meanwhile, Lonnie had been locked away. Exploring her surroundings, she discovered a bathroom next door. If that was the case, there had to be a vent for ventilation. She had to get out of there before she was discovered. But just as she climbed up to the window, the door burst open. Determined not to be captured again, she didn't hesitate to jump. She sprinted towards the dense woods. The girl, kidnapped and about to be sold into slavery, seized her chance and plunged into the forest. But after a short while, she collided head-on with someone. Lonnie thought she was about to be caught again, but the person's voice was unexpectedly gentle, like an angel's. "Child, are you lost? What is your name?" Lonnie didn't recognize the person in front of her, but her intuition told her they weren't dangerous. So she answered, "My name is Lonnie. Can you help me?" The person immediately recognized that the girl possessed the true eye. It was a power power only those of royal blood could wield. Even the current emperor didn't possess such potent divine power. Before she could confirm the girl's identity, the knights who had kidnapped Lonnie caught up. Lonnie, like a startled rabbit, quickly darted into the undergrowth. The silver-haired woman pointed the kidnappers in the opposite direction, but after she had led the men astray, she found the undergrowth empty. However, they would meet again soon. Meanwhile, the Duke, aided by the prince, had arrived at the port of Mbok to search. He was certain Lonnie was still here. After all, the kidnappers would act while the guards were relaxed in the early morning hours. He ordered his men to search every building, even ordinary homes. On the other side, after running for what felt like an eternity, Lonnie finally found a house. But in the next moment, she was dragged back. "Try running again," a gruff voice threatened, "and I really won't spare you." The man's sinister expression terrified the other children, reducing them to whimpers. Lonnie stifled her own sobs, pressing her hand over her mouth. Just then, someone rushed in. "Something's happened. We're under attack. It looks like noble soldiers." Lonnie was sure it was the Duke coming to rescue her. Seizing the opportunity while the two men were distracted, she bolted. She quickly locked the door behind her and ran without hesitation. She knew if she didn't escape now, she might never get another chance. But she hadn't anticipated another door further down the corridor. It wouldn't budge, no matter how hard she pushed. Hearing the kidnappers' mocking laughter behind her, Lonnie spun around, desperately searching for another way out. Terror gripped her. Was she truly trapped? The next moment, she collided with a man. Instinctively, she cowered, covering her head and sobbing, "Please don't hurt me. Please." Then, a familiar voice reached her ears. "Lonnie, calm down. It's all right. You're safe now." It was the Duke. Just then, Eus rushed towards her. "Thank goodness you're all right," he cried. "If we hadn't found you, I would have regretted it for the rest of my life." Lonnie flung herself into her brother's arms, afraid it was all a dream. Finally safe, her tense nerves gave way, and she drifted off to sleep. Sometime later, they arrived back at the Duke's mansion. Lonnie awoke from her slumber and immediately burst into tears, burying her face in the Duchess's embrace. Everyone rejoiced at her safe return. Life at the Duke's mansion returned to its usual vibrancy. Everyone vied for Lonnie's attention. Eus extended a personal invitation to Lonnie, and together they embarked on a journey towards a happy future. The orphan girl was, in fact, of royal blood. Upon learning this, Lonnie felt no joy, choosing instead to continue her current life. To her, this was her true home. Time passed, and they all grew older. Although Lonnie was aware of her divine powers, her life remained unchanged. This was her simple, humble wish. Kind-hearted Lonnie became a volunteer, helping the common people. But as the Empire expanded its military campaigns, the number of war-wounded continued to rise. The Mars family established a separate annex dedicated to treating the injured. Lonnie secretly used her divine powers to heal those suffering in pain. These experiences deepened her gratitude towards the Duke's family, a debt she felt she could never repay. She wanted to spread happiness to everyone around her. Just then, Ian brought her a letter. Lonnie's heart leaped with excitement. She assumed it was a reply from Eus, who was away at the battlefield. But to her surprise, it was an invitation from the royal family. Princess Bianca and Prince Henry's birthdays were approaching. Lonnie felt a pang of nostalgia. Because of the war, they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Only Ian knew the truth. The Duke was preventing her from seeing Prince Henry. Just then, a knock echoed from a door. Visitors had arrived, claiming to be searching for their lost child. Over the years, countless people had come forward, but after using her divine powers to sense their true intentions, they all proved to be false. While it saddened Lonnie, she recovered quickly. Time had etched wrinkles onto the Duchess's face, but in her eyes, Lonnie was still the little girl she had taken in. However, their peaceful life was about to be disrupted. Today was the day of the royal banquet. Lonnie attended with Eus and the Duchess. The reunited friends happily chatted, catching up on lost time. Prince Henry eagerly joined them, his presence impossible to ignore. His shy demeanor revealed that he still harbored the same affection for Lonnie as he had when they were children. Bianca, still indulging in her matchmaking fantasies, was startled by Andy's sudden appearance. She bristled like a startled cat. The two continued their playful banter, just as they had in their childhood. Lonnie couldn't help but find their dynamic endearing. Yet, a part of her wished Eus were there too. The mere thought of Eus sent her heart fluttering. Even after all these years, she still couldn't understand the nature of her feelings. Embarrassed at being caught in her reverie, Lonnie quickly excused herself, but she accidentally bumped into someone. Her divine power manifested without warning. To avoid revealing her powers, Lonnie quickly bowed her head and apologized. As a result, she didn't see the woman standing before her. Unaware, the woman stared at Lonnie's retreating figure, murmuring to herself, "This girl looks a lot like the Lonnie I knew. Could it be her? What's the connection between that little orphan and the Emperor's lover?" Lady Castor encountered a familiar figure at the banquet. After having someone investigate, she was surprised to discover that the child was initially called Lonnie when she first arrived at the Duke's mansion. However, she refused to believe that this was her Lonnie. After all, she had personally confirmed the child's death years ago. The Duchess soon learned about the investigation, and that it was Lady Castor's maid conducting it. The Duchess was puzzled. Why would Lady Castor investigate Lonnie? But in the next moment, a suspicion formed. Before Castor was married, she had disappeared for a whole year. Many speculated that she had hidden away to secretly give birth. Regardless of the truth, the Duchess couldn't ignore the situation. She decided to take preemptive measures. Soon, the day of Lonnie's birthday banquet arrived. Almost all the nobles were present. It was said that the Duke would officially register Lonnie as a member of the Mars family. "Thank you all for coming to my birthday banquet," Lonnie addressed the crowd. "I hope everyone has a wonderful time." Most people were captivated by Lonnie at first glance. She was not only lovely, but also graceful and poised. However, a few people held hostility in their eyes. Possessing divine powers, Lonnie could clearly sense it, but she didn't dwell on it. She simply missed EU's all the more at this moment. As she stood lost in thought, Andy quietly approached. With a worried expression, he asked if any young lords had been bothering her. After all, his sister was so beautiful. How could others remain indifferent? "So, if anyone bothers you, just tell your brother." Andy grew increasingly agitated, causing a minor commotion. Not wanting to be surrounded by onlookers, Lonnie slipped away to take a walk outside. But she was once again subjected to unpleasant remarks. Finally, they even maliciously speculated about her relationship with the Duke. "The Duke isn't here. Why don't we go talk to her? Maybe she'll enjoy our company," said the leering men as they blocked her path, their words dripping with suggestive innuendo. But in the next moment, Andy suddenly appeared. Such loose tongues. It seems the Mars family is a laughingstock in your eyes. Caught red-handed, the men were flustered, but still believed it was a trivial matter, not worth pursuing. Andy disagreed. How dare they insult his beloved sister? Just as he was about to lash out, Lonnie stopped him. "Brother, there's no need to deal with people who disrespect a noble's reputation." The men, realizing their predicament, flushed with shame and demanded Andy uphold justice. But Andy was quite pleased with his sister's response. Just then, a pleasant male voice echoed from nearby. "It seems you've grown too comfortable." EUs proceeded to scold the trio. Then the Duke appeared. His cold, sharp gaze sent the men scrambling in terror. "Members of your families are forbidden from setting foot on Mars territory ever again." After the guards dragged the men away, Lonnie happily rushed into the Duke's arms, tearfully expressing how much she had missed him. Next came Euse. Just a glance at him made her heart skip a beat. She couldn't compose herself. Then, just like when they were children, Euse lifted her up, worriedly remarking that she was as light as a feather. "Have you not been eating properly?" Lonnie blushed crimson. Too shy to look up, feeling left out, Andy jumped in to make his presence known. The family was once again its usual lively self. Years ago, the girl had been kidnapped by the Marquis's daughter and nearly sold into slavery in another country. After the Duke investigated the matter, he promptly bankrupted the Marquis's family, reducing the once proud daughter to a mere servant of a princess born out of wedlock. It could only be said, "Live by the sword, die by the sword." However, even after suffering such humiliation, Lydia remained, waiting for an opportunity to take revenge on Lonnie. The princess also had feelings for EU's, the Duke's eldest son. But every time EU's returned from the battlefield, he would immediately go to see Lonnie. This greatly displeased the princess. What's so good about that girl? It's infuriating. Though Princess Bianca considered Lonnie utterly ordinary, hardly a rival, she still found her presence irritating. Thus, the malicious princess gave Lydia a task to get rid of Lonnie by any means necessary. This played right into Lydia's hands. Soon, Countess Castor confirmed Lonnie's identity, though she didn't understand how her supposedly deceased daughter could be there. She saw it as a fortunate turn of events. She could exploit the situation ruthlessly. Branding Lonnie a bastard would give her leverage, and using her daughter's status as a countess's child for a strategic marriage would create better opportunities for her son, Hal. This was the only thought that crossed her mind the moment she learned her daughter was alive. Meanwhile, Lonnie and Andy arrived at the training grounds. The atmosphere between them, Hughes and the Duke, was as close and comfortable as it had been in their childhood. Andy, ever the doting brother, held one of Lonnie's small dolls, ready to build a snowman. The three men, in a rare moment of agreement, paired off and began building snowmen. The Duke partnered with Andy, while Lonnie joined Hughes. Lost in her own thoughts, Lonnie was suddenly hit in the face with a snowball thrown by Hughes. Startled and slightly annoyed, she pounced on him, only to have her hand caught. She blushed crimson. Though she knew her feelings for Hughes were different, she still couldn't understand what they were. She stared after him, lost in thought, as he was called away by the Duke. A few days later, the Duchess told her husband what she had discovered by investigating the maid who had previously cared for Castor. In examining the correspondence between her and the Count, it was confirmed that Lonnie was indeed Castor's daughter. Because Lonnie possessed divine powers, the Duke reasonably suspected that she was the descendant of the deposed crown prince. After all, the two had been intimate. The Duke and Duchess had the means to completely separate Lonnie from Castor. But what if Lonnie wanted a relationship with her birth mother? After all these years, the Duke and Duchess had always considered Lonnie their own child. Though they were reluctant, they respected Lonnie's wishes and hoped she would follow her heart and live a happy life. The girl finally understood that her feelings for her brother were the stirrings of first love. Just moments ago, the Duke had again asked for Lonnie's opinion, hoping she would carefully consider officially joining the Duke's family registry. "If you're willing, you're always welcome. We already consider you family." With a heart full of complex emotions, Lonnie went for a walk to clear her head. Though she loved everyone in the Duke's household and wanted to stay with them forever, she had reservations. She worried that officially joining the family would damage the Mars family's reputation. Having grown up under the Duke's protection, she wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. Just then, Hughes rode up on horseback. He had come looking for her, worried when he noticed she wasn't in the mansion so late at night. "I couldn't sleep, so I came out for a walk. You could have been kidnapped. What would you have done if I hadn't come?" Lonnie pouted, disagreeing. She wasn't a child anymore. "Now that I'm here, I can't just send you back without doing anything." Hughes extended his hand, inviting her to join him for a ride. After Lonnie agreed, Hughes lifted her onto the horse, wrapping his arm around her waist for safety. It seemed her quiet walk wouldn't be so quiet after all. Lonnie was shy the entire ride, nestled comfortably against him, until the horse finally stopped. The scenery was breathtaking. Seeing her expression soften, Hughes smiled. "Does my Lonnie have any wishes?" he asked gently. "I heard that wishes made in a field covered with the first snow always come true." Lonnie seemed lost in thought, so Hughes continued. "Then let me make a wish first. I wish for Lonnie to live a happy and carefree life with us." At that moment, Lonnie finally understood the unfamiliar emotion she had felt since she first met Hughes as a child. It was the legendary feeling of first love. For a moment, she didn't know how to face Hughes. Blushing, she suggested they head back. The Hughes, seeing her reaction, had a suspicion about her feelings. Meanwhile, Countess Castor was pondering whether the Duke's family would formally adopt Lonnie. She found it unbelievable that they treated Lonnie, who wasn't blood-related, like their own. This led her to a theory. The Duke must know about Lonnie's divine powers. It was the only explanation that made sense. After all, a girl with divine powers would be a valuable asset, a powerful card to strengthen Hal's position. With this devious thought in mind, she decided to confirm her suspicions. She would go to the Duke's mansion and bring Lonnie back immediately. "I have something very important to tell her," she declared. Since realizing her feelings for Hughes, Lonnie had been in a state of perpetual excitement. She couldn't focus on anything. Just then, Ian rushed in with a message. A servant had arrived, sent by her birth parents. Lonnie didn't think much of it. She had experienced several similar incidents over the years. However, this time seemed different. Before she could react, the Duchess had something to say. "This time, the person who came is related to your birth mother." The Duchess explained the entire situation to Lonnie, wanted to hear her thoughts. After a pause, Lonnie asked seriously, "If I don't want to go, can we just pretend we don't know anything?" The Duchess understood that this wasn't a viable solution. Even so, if Lonnie refused, They would do everything in their power to prevent the situation from escalating. Still, Lonnie was afraid. What if they discover my royal divine powers? They won't let it go. Things might get even worse. But the royal family hasn't shown up yet. They probably don't know about this. At that moment, the butler hurried in. The Duke requests your presence, Miss Lonnie. He asks that you meet the envoy from Countess Castor's estate. Together, they went downstairs. The man introduced himself as Patterson, the butler of Countess Castor's estate. He had been sent to escort Miss Lonnie. Miss, you are likely the Countess's long-lost daughter. Therefore, we hope you will come with us for confirmation. Lonnie only thought for a few seconds before firmly refusing. I don't know either Countess Castor or you. I won't leave with you. The man immediately invoked the authority of the temple, claiming the invitation had been officially sanctioned. However, Lonnie remained steadfast. Even the temple has no right to force me. Just then, EUs appeared, firmly stating, please leave. She will not be going with you. The butler recalled the Countess's instructions. If Lonnie strongly refused, he shouldn't force her. He apologized, bowed, and turned to leave. Just as everyone breathed a sigh of relief, a commotion erupted outside. It's bad. The royal family is here. Someone reported the young miss for impersonating a noble. The next moment, a squad of soldiers barged in. Excuse us. We have orders from Princess Bianca to bring the culprit into custody. Lonnie had been reported by the villainous princess. She was about to be arrested for impersonating a noble. The Duke was furious. He was determined to protect Lonnie. No matter the charge, this child is a noble. Under no circumstances will she be taken away by force. He then drove the soldiers out. Lonnie suddenly remembered. To register her with the Duke's family, when she was younger, they had given her the surname of a family that was about to disappear. This had always been a hidden danger. Seeing everyone worried and busy on her behalf, she felt deeply guilty and made a silent resolution. Meanwhile, at the temple, Alvin, having heard the news, was distraught all day. He hoped the Divine Maiden would intervene. But the Divine Maiden knew Lonnie's true royal lineage and foresaw the inevitable turmoil. Worried, Alvin decided to visit Lonnie. That night, Lonnie left the Duke's mansion with her belongings. To avoid causing further trouble, this was all she could do. Just then, Levin caught up to her. Lonnie finally broke down. She didn't want to leave. The thought of leaving the family she had known all these years made it impossible to take another step. But aside from leaving, she felt powerless. I'm being ridiculous, aren't I? I'm leaving, but I can't bring myself to go. Levin quickly comforted her. Actually, I don't want you to leave, miss. I'm sure everyone feels the same way as I do. And, miss, don't you like young master EUs? Lonnie blushed, wanting to deny it, but Levin had known for a long time. It's all right. Just like who I like is my own business. Who you like is your freedom, miss. So, please return to the mansion. This isn't your fault. Everyone at the Duke's mansion truly cares for you. Don't leave, even if it's for them. Moved by these sincere words, Lonnie decided to face the crisis head-on. Soon, the trial began. Even His Majesty the Emperor was present to witness it. The illegitimate princess, with a smug look, ordered the Clay family girl to be brought forward. Even the identification card and seal were complete. Now, all that was needed was verification through the temple's divine power. However, the princess insisted that Lonnie and this so-called young master undergo a connection test. If their bloodlines were different, it would be life-threatening. At this point, the Duke finally spoke. Shouldn't we verify the young man's identity first? Perhaps he is the one impersonating a noble. The man clearly looked guilty. Just as the standoff continued, the Divine Maiden unexpectedly arrived, and with her came Lonnie. I heard someone wanted to put me on trial, so I came. The princess, with a disdainful look, launched into a tirade of mockery directed at Lonnie. Unexpectedly, Lonnie admitted she wasn't a noble. The two villains were overjoyed. However, the next moment, Lonnie uttered words that shocked everyone. Actually, I am of royal blood. I've been accused of impersonating a noble, but I'm revealing my royal identity. I'm here to prove it. The princess, who had initiated the accusation, panicked. She hastily accused Lonnie of insulting the royal family. However, the emperor, with a playful look, warned her, if you're lying, even the Mars family will be implicated. Lonnie wouldn't allow such a thing to happen, and this matter could only be resolved by her. The emperor then instructed the High Divine Maiden to step forward and verify. The High Divine Maiden approached with a sacred artifact, touched Lonnie's forehead, and infused her with spiritual power. Instantly, Lonnie's pupils turned a translucent blue. Everyone present widened their eyes, including the Emperor and the Duke and Duchess. The divine power Lonnie displayed was unprecedentedly strong. The Emperor let out a wicked smile, already plotting how to use her. Therefore, he didn't pursue further bloodline testing, but instead recognized Lonnie as his long-lost daughter. Come closer. You really do resemble me. You're about the same age as the fourth prince. You should become good playmates. When you are officially invested as a princess, I will bestow a new name upon you. Lonnie had never imagined leaving the Duke's mansion this way, but to resolve the current predicament, this was the only option. I have something to say, Your Majesty. Lady Mars was the one who discovered I possessed divine power. If it weren't for them, I might never have known my true identity. So, I hope this matter won't implicate anyone in the Mars family. Upon hearing this, the Emperor, who had intended to use this opportunity to punish the Duke's family, was speechless. The clueless princess still wanted Lonnie punished, but was rebuked by the Emperor for spreading rumors. Fearing punishment, the princess hastily shifted the blame to Lydia. It was her. She resented Miss Lonnie. I heard she even instigated someone to kidnap Princess Lonnie before. That person was her. The Emperor, making an example of her, ordered the soldiers to imprison Lydia. Lydia pleaded with Lonnie for mercy, begging her to spare her. However, remembering everything that had happened in the past, Lonnie felt no pity for her and simply turned and left. Back at the Duke's mansion, everyone rushed over to comfort her, worried. Lonnie put on a brave face, but he saw through her pretense. If you don't want this, the Duke's mansion will do everything to help you. It's all right, brother Euse. I've been very happy growing up in the Duke's mansion. Thank you for raising me. Thank you all for this time. I'll be going now. Please take care. Lonnie hurried to leave the room. If she left, the people of the Duke's mansion would be safe. However, the next moment, Euse embraced her from behind. Lonnie, remember, no matter what happens, you will always be a member of the Mars family. We will always be by your side. Lonnie finally broke down, turning and embracing Euse. She clung to this last moment of warmth, knowing that the Emperor, wary of the Duke's influence, would likely make it difficult for them to see each other. Only when the Emperor's officials repeatedly urged her did Lonnie manage a smile and bid farewell to everyone. Having just returned to the Imperial Palace, Lonnie was introduced to Countess Castor by the Emperor. Well, isn't my daughter beautiful? This unexpected reunion between mother and daughter was far from ideal. Countess Castor had intended to reveal the truth to the Emperor, but Lonnie interrupted, claiming to feel unwell and excusing herself. It was clear she didn't want to acknowledge their relationship. Countess Castor's sadness lasted only a moment before she made a rather outrageous decision to marry her daughter, Lonnie, to her son, Hal. This, she reasoned, would expand Hal's influence, the girl's restoration to princesshood, and return to the palace. Deeply saddened to Euse, he blamed himself for failing to protect his sister. He wondered if things would have been different if he had more power. Just then, he heard someone call out, "Brother." He thought Lonnie had returned, but when he opened the door, he found no one there. This wasn't like him at all. He could only hold Lonnie's doll, finding solace in the familiar object. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Bianca awkwardly addressed Lonnie as aunt. The sudden shift in their relationship, from childhood playmates to this formal title, felt strange to both of them. Lonnie suggested they could dispense with formalities in private. Bianca burst into tears and hugged her, apologizing for her earlier insincere words. Once they were settled, Lonnie quickly asked Bianca about the Duchess's health. "She told me to tell you she's doing well at the Duke's mansion and is more worried about whether you're eating properly. Don't worry about anything. Just focus on being happy here. My brother and I'll take good care of you." Hearing this, Lonnie felt a little relieved. Though she was in a strange new palace, at least she still had someone precious by her side. Just then, Bianca produced a pink cloth bag, saying Euse had asked her to deliver it. Lonnie opened it with a puzzled expression, only to find a beautiful hairpin inside. Although Euse didn't say anything at the time, I could tell he missed you very much. Lonnie blushed crimson. Seeing this, Bianca practically squealed with delight. That night, Lonnie dreamt she was wearing the hairpin, and Euse appeared beside her, pulling her into a tight embrace and whispering his longing. "I miss you so much, Lonnie." Lonnie's eyes snapped open. She chided herself for dreaming of Euse so vividly. But the next moment, a figure materialized in her room. As the figure lowered their cloak, Lonnie recognized the face of the person she'd been yearning for. "Euse. So, Lonnie, you're still awake. I came to see you." Hearing Euse's comforting voice, Lonnie couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. They embraced. "I miss you so much, Hughes," Lonnie blurted out, surprising him with her heartfelt confession. However, the commotion in the room attracted the attention of the guards. Hughes knew he had to leave. He knelt down and nuzzled Lonnie. "Our Lonnie is all alone again, but you must take good care of yourself. Eat and sleep on time, you hear." Their brief reunion ended. The following day, Lonnie visited the temple affiliated with the royal family. She hadn't seen Levin since the trial. She'd heard he had been transferred there. Just then, the archpriest appeared with Levin. Lonnie knew the archpriest held a position equal to the High Divine Maiden, but he also wielded significant worldly power, giving him a status within the palace rivaling that of the High Divine Maiden. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Lonnie and Levin went out to the courtyard. During his time at the temple, Levin had uncovered some intriguing information. The current royal family publicly claimed to be of the same lineage as the Cloyd family, the founders of the empire, sharing the same bloodline. However, rumors suggested that the first emperor, the founder of the empire, was actually the first head of the Mars family, a man named Drona Mars. The mother she hadn't seen in years wanted her to marry her own brother. Lonnie had just learned this shocking news. The Mars family ancestors, just like the royal family, possessed the legitimate right to inherit the throne. Normally, such a topic was forbidden, but Levin claimed to have overheard others discussing it. It was clear something was being deliberately concealed. However, Lonnie didn't press him for answers, instead letting Levin leave. If what he said was true, it meant the current ruler of the empire should be a member of the Mars family. That would explain the royal family's apprehension towards the Mars family. Taking it a step further, if the founder of the Mars family was indeed a woman, and she successfully ascended the throne, it would mean that a princess also had the right to inherit. Upon returning to the palace that day, Lonnie encountered someone unexpected, Ian, who had cared for her since childhood. The Duke had pulled some strings to get her back into the palace as Lonnie's personal maid. As Ian dressed her hair, as she always used to, Lonnie found herself reminiscing about her time at the Duke's mansion. So much time had passed. Ian also brought some important news. The royal family was selecting a personal knight for her, and a swordsmanship tournament was being held outside the palace walls for this purpose. The victor would become her dedicated knight. Lonnie immediately thought of a use, but the thought lasted only a second. She knew that members of the royal guard couldn't marry. Having a family would create a vulnerability, compromising their loyalty. Just then, word arrived that Countess Castor requested an audience. Not wanting the matter to spread, Lonnie sent Ian away first. To her surprise, the Countess embraced her, declaring it was her birthday. She then produced an exquisite necklace from her pocket as a gift. Lonnie firmly refused it. "The fact that you are my birth mother must remain a secret, and I recall explicitly rejecting you before." The Countess hadn't expected such resolve. It seemed she would have to try harder. Predictably, she resorted to emotional appeals. "No matter what, you are my child. I didn't abandon you intentionally. I searched the entire village, believing you were dead. And you are not the Emperor's child. You are the child of the deposed former crown prince. That's why I couldn't search for you openly. The current emperor is selfish. He will discard you once you're no longer useful. So, if you want to secure your position, you must rely on your brother, Hal." Lonnie felt a chill. It was clear she meant for Lonnie to marry her half-brother, whom she had never met. She had hoped for some remorse from her mother, but this was what she received. "What am I to you? This was your intention all along, wasn't it? If I had gone to the Count's estate, I would have lived as an illegitimate child, barely surviving. The Countess simply wanted to use her." With that, Lonnie resolutely showed her mother out. A few days later, the swordsmanship tournament arrived. It was the day her personal knight would be chosen. Lonnie also learned something momentous from Ian. Eus was participating in the competition to become her knight. To see his sister every day, he had volunteered for the selection process. If chosen, he would forfeit his right to inherit the title, marry, and have children. And the arena was unforgiving. Even death would only be seen as a testament to his lack of skill. Lonnie prayed silently, hoping for Eus' safety. The competition soon began. Before long, Eus had fought his way to the finals. The emperor was displeased. Princess Aileen, who was fond of Eus, was even more upset. She proposed a marriage alliance between Eus and the royal family. Lonnie knew that if the emperor agreed, even EUs wouldn't be able to refuse easily. So, she spoke up, pointing out the impropriety of proposing a marriage to a contestant. The emperor, however, retorted, "Do you want the eldest son of the Mars family to be your knight?" The air instantly chilled. Thinking quickly, Lonnie replied that changing the rules mid-competition would damage the royal family's reputation. And if a member of the Mars family becomes my knight, wouldn't that mean their loyalty would belong to the royal family? The emperor found this logic compelling, and perhaps this could be a chance to suppress the Mars family's growing influence. Sure enough, EUs won the competition. The emperor, fully aware that joining the royal guard meant forfeiting the right to inherit the title, sarcastically remarked that the future of the Mars family was bright. EUs, however, paid him no mind. Instead, he knelt before Lonnie on one knee. EUs of the Mars family wishes to pledge his allegiance to Her Highness the Princess. Will you accept my oath of fealty? He kissed the back of Lonnie's hand. I hope my request does not place undue burden upon the princess. Hearing these words, Lonnie finally smiled with relief. With EUs by her side, it felt as though any obstacle could be overcome. Later, back in her chambers, EUs reiterated his purpose for being there. I came to protect you of my own volition, and my father wished it as well, so you needn't worry about anything. For a brief moment, the two forgot everything else, embracing tightly, savoring this hard-won moment of happiness. Unaware, however, that danger was fast approaching. Elsewhere, the Duke received news of unrest in the recaptured nation of Semberg. This was a critical juncture in the campaign against Grancis, and he feared unforeseen complications. There was also another piece of important news. Count Louis, hailing from the former enemy nation of Filton, had petitioned the emperor for Princess Eileen's hand in marriage. Under normal circumstances, the emperor would have no reason to refuse. Louis had personally delivered the head of Filton's ruler, allowing the empire to easily reclaim the nation. However, the Duke held little regard for the man. He also had a premonition that Filton was highly likely to attempt a restoration. Based on various clues, he suspected Levin was the missing son of Filton's Grand Duke. The resemblance between the two was uncanny. He could only hope that Lonnie wouldn't be caught up in these turbulent affairs. Meanwhile, Lonnie, in good spirits, received an unexpected visitor. The High Divine Maiden, having noticed something amiss, inquired about Levin. Although Lonnie had grown up alongside Levin, she didn't actually know much about him. Just then, the High Divine Maiden revealed a shocking piece of information. Levin had a hidden identity. The royal family would soon be embroiled in a bloody conflict. The princess, recently acknowledged by the royal family, was targeted for assassination at the banquet. This was her first public appearance as a princess, and she could only observe the Duke's family from afar. Thankfully, she had EUs by her side, lessening her loneliness. However, due to her status, everyone present, regardless of their motives, approached her, forcing EUs to personally fetch her a drink. The New Year's banquet revealed to Lonnie the emperor's favoritism towards the fourth prince, as he found excuses to exclude the crown prince and Princess Beatrice from attending. As she glanced around the room, bored, an assassin disguised as a maid rushed towards her. Fortunately, EUs arrived just in time. Chaos erupted. The EUs, with overwhelming strength, subdued the attacker and extracted her true identity. A knight from the conquered nation of Semberg. After she was taken away, EUs immediately checked on Lonnie. Although unharmed, she was clearly shaken. He was terrified. Despite his preparations, he still couldn't accept the cruelty of this world. The incident threw the Duke's household into disarray. EUs realized that simply protecting her at his side wasn't enough. He needed to get Lonnie away from the emperor. Thus, the ever-loyal EUs proposed a drastic measure, forcing the emperor to abdicate. After all, the current emperor only cared about his own interests, neglecting the people of the empire. The Duke seriously considered the idea. Weakening the imperial power and strengthening their own was the pragmatic approach. Soon, I will be deployed to Filton under royal orders to quell the rebellion. The harsh weather and terrain would be a significant disadvantage, but the Duke had already formulated a strategy. We can no longer trust the emperor. We must protect Lonnie ourselves. A few days later, Lonnie received news that the Duke had been injured and gone missing during his deployment. He was last seen in the Ellis Canyon, a site of recent conflict. It was speculated that he was ambushed while searching for food and water. Given the canyon's cliffs, it was presumed he had met with an unfortunate end. Lonnie collapsed to the floor in anguish. The sight pained EUs deeply. He ordered everyone to leave, then revealed to Lonnie that her father was still alive. The details are not safe to discuss here. But before that, I need to take you to see someone. Lonnie assumed she was going to see the Duke, but instead, EUs asked her how much she knew about Levin. We're going to the church. There, you will learn some important truths. Not just about your father's whereabouts, but also about your good friend, Levin. To protect a girl unrelated by blood, the ever-loyal Duke is secretly plotting against the Emperor. Just now, Lonnie followed EUs to the church and met Levin, who had been missing for a while. After a brief exchange of greetings, Lonnie asked why she had been brought here. EUs truthfully explained that the Duke's disappearance had been planned in advance. It turned out the Duke disapproved of the Emperor's autocratic rule and wanted to check the imperial power. Only with the Mars family absent would the surrounding nations make their move. Then, the royal family would be forced to rely on the Mars family's strength. Unexpectedly, the Emperor also attempted to eliminate the Duke. Therefore, after the attack, the Duke took the opportunity to go into hiding. Hearing the news of the Duke's injury, Lonnie was consumed with anxiety. To prevent her from excessive worry, Hughes didn't disclose the true extent of the Duke's injuries. Instead, he claimed the Duke was safe, hidden in a secret base. Their intimate exchange deeply stung Levin. Yet, he chose to keep his affections hidden. So, how long will the Duke remain in hiding? A few months at most, until the Empire's control weakens and the occupied nations rebel. The royal family will then need the Mars family's help. But why is Levin here? Does he have anything to do with this? The Duke gave me a proposition. He asked if I wanted to reclaim Filton. Lonnie suddenly understood. Levin was the missing son of Filton's Grand Duke. The Duke hopes I will become the Grand Duke of Filton and lead the rebels to aid him. A few days before the incident, the Duke had sought him out. Initially, Levin had no intention of restoring his nation. He only wanted to protect Lonnie, because Lonnie was his new purpose, his reason for living. But the Duke told him that his sister, believed to have committed suicide, was still alive, and that she was currently imprisoned in the traitor Lewis's residence, destined to live the rest of her days in shadow. Moreover, becoming the Grand Duke of Filton and wielding power would allow him to better protect Lonnie. How could he refuse such a mutually beneficial arrangement? I hope you can forgive me for not being able to stay by your side. Holding hands, they encouraged and blessed each other. Soon, the Emperor received news of the rebellion in Filton. It was clear that without the Mars family, no one could stop the occupied nations from revolting. The helpless Emperor flew into a rage, but upon thinking of Lonnie, a sinister smile crept across his face. Season 2 quietly came to an end. Please stay safe until then. Although they hadn't explicitly confessed their feelings, it was practically the same as if they had. The two leaned close, cherishing this rare moment of warmth. The day of EU's deployment and the banquet arrived quickly. The fourth prince, whom Lonnie had never formally met, appeared. By blood, they were half-siblings through their mothers, but through their fathers, he was the child of her uncle. So, it was puzzling when the fourth prince addressed her as sister. And when she learned the Emperor had chosen Hal as her dance partner for the banquet, she couldn't help but feel surprised. What were they planning? On the way to the banquet hall, Hal said something strange. "Sister, only if I become Emperor will Mother be happy." That's all. After they entered together, Hal left. The Duchess, whom Lonnie hadn't seen in a while, took the opportunity to speak with her. The polite but distant feeling between them saddened Lonnie. However, in the next moment, the Duchess leaned in close and whispered in her ear, "If you encounter any difficulties, you can tell us. We will always be on your side." Family who understood each other didn't need many words. The moment of parting arrived quietly. The Hughes, as the head of the Mars family, swore his loyalty to the royal family. Then, looking at Lonnie, he said affectionately, "I also swear to protect the Empire with my life and keep Princess Lonnie from any harm." No one could predict what the outcome would be. And so, the horn of war was blown. The two lovers were separated by the Emperor's obstruction. A year quickly passed. During this time, Lonnie constantly strived to become stronger. Although her divine power was already exceptional, it wasn't enough. After all, the war had been raging for a year. She needed more leverage to protect the people she cherished. However, looking at the Imperial Guards responsible for her training, Lonnie couldn't help but feel a little melancholic. If only my brother were here. Just then, a servant came to report that the Emperor had an important matter to discuss. And the location was unexpectedly Countess Castor's private chambers. This made her feel uneasy, but she could only endure it. You're busy with those useless things again today. It's time for your bridal lessons. It's also time to announce your engagement to Hal. Let's set it for your next birthday. Lonnie couldn't accept this at all. Moreover, Hal was her half-brother. But it was clear the Emperor wouldn't easily change his mind. He might even be displeased by her refusal. So, Lonnie could only pretend to comply. Meanwhile, news of Iyu's heroic deeds spread throughout the empire. However, this matter was complicated for him personally. He wasn't entirely sure what his feelings for Lonnie were. He just knew that when someone approached her, he felt uncomfortable, or rather, jealous. He couldn't bear the thought of her marrying someone else. However, now wasn't the time to think about such things. His priority was to end the war as soon as possible and return to Lonnie's side. He could ponder these matters then. However, the situation wasn't optimistic. The Select tribe continued to unify other tribes, expanding their power and becoming a significant threat. However, the Emperor, lost in his debauchery, wouldn't provide support. Returning to the capital was extremely difficult. Meanwhile, Lonnie held regular tea parties as instructed. There, she unexpectedly encountered a timid and adorable girl. This made Lonnie feel a sense of nostalgia, as if she were seeing her younger self. She reminisced about those past days. At the same time, there was a hot topic of discussion at the tea party: the handsome king of the newly independent Filton. Lonnie wasn't surprised by this. After all, Levin was indeed very handsome. Just then, a distraught Bianca appeared. Upon inquiring, Lonnie learned that the Emperor had betrothed Bianca to the chieftain of the Select tribe, and the unreliable Andy actually said he would duel the Emperor. I don't know what will happen to me, but Lonnie, you must marry Brother Iyu's. These words made Lonnie's face flush crimson. She couldn't help but imagine the scene. To ease the awkwardness, she could only change the subject, promising, "I will definitely find a way to stop your marriage." A scene of two men vying for one woman unfolded. After being warned by the Emperor, the princess continued her medical volunteer work, helping one person after another suffering from illness. However, the Duke, whom Lonnie hadn't seen for a while, brought bad news. The Select tribe's front lines were gradually moving south, and the plague was spreading. So, staying here was dangerous. The temple would send priests to help, but it would be disastrous if the princess, Lonnie, were infected. Although Lonnie was reluctant to leave, she agreed so as not to worry her family. With the situation so critical, can Iyu's return? I hope he can come home safely. The Duke saw at a glance that Lonnie still cared for that blockhead, even more than she cared for him. He unexpectedly felt a pang of jealousy towards his own son. You don't have to worry. After all, that guy was trained by me personally. Then, the Duchess mentioned Bianca. News of her impending arranged marriage had spread like wildfire. Now, Andy had finally stepped in to negotiate with the royal family. Although the outcome was uncertain, it at least gave the royal family an alternative. If you encounter such a situation, you must tell us. We will do everything we can to help you. Soon, the day of Lonnie's birthday banquet arrived. A pristine white gown and perfectly arranged jewels made her look even more beautiful. Listening to the praises around her, she couldn't help but sigh. If only Iyu's could see me now. Meanwhile, as if in answer to her wish, the Emperor had decided to have Lonnie marry Hal. He also weighed the pros and cons of Bianca and Andy's marriage. If he could control the Mars family through marriage, it wouldn't be a bad thing. But it could also cause unnecessary trouble. He might have worried about this before, but now he didn't care at all. After all, as long as he used Lonnie's divine power to revive the royal family, he could become the most powerful emperor in history. Soon, the banquet officially began. The three of them entered in a strangely awkward formation, creating a peculiar atmosphere. Looking at Henry, whom she hadn't seen in a while, Lonnie felt a little embarrassed. The oblivious Henry had just learned from Bianca that Lonnie was his first love, and now their relationship had become that of aunt and nephew. This situation was truly difficult to handle. Soon, the Emperor announced the official start of the banquet. Henry, as he wished, invited Lonnie for the first dance. Andy and Bianca, the bickering pair, also partnered up, just as Lonnie was engrossed in observing them. A wine glass fell, staining her dress red. Count Malef immediately made a fuss, and the servant girl fearfully prostrated herself on the ground, begging for forgiveness. This infuriated Lonnie. If it weren't for you, how could she have fallen? The man fearfully apologized profusely. Lonnie helped the servant girl up and had someone take her to the lounge to bandage her wound. The servant girl couldn't believe it. Not only was she not scolded, but she was treated with kindness. She only hoped for a chance to repay this kindness in the future. Lani herself was also quite pleased, as this allowed her to temporarily escape the emperor's watchful eye. Her childhood friend, now the emperor, proposed to her in public. Lani secretly slipped away from her birthday banquet to attend a party prepared by her true family. Although the gifts weren't expensive, each one touched her heart. A tea set with her favorite pattern, a handmade cushion, sleep-inducing perfume, and pajamas she used to wear, all gifts filled with love. Seeing these things, Lani was moved to tears. The group, reunited after so long, embraced tightly. Soon, the banquet resumed. The emperor planned to announce Lani and Hal's engagement during the festivities. Just then, the Philton envoy arrived, led by her childhood friend, Levin. The emperor was initially displeased by the interruption, but when he saw the chest full of gold they brought, a wide grin spread across his face. Lani, watching from the side, felt a surge of emotion. She hadn't expected to meet again as the princess of the empire and the king of another nation. But seeing that familiar smile, her uneasy heart calmed. "Your Majesty, I have something important to say. To strengthen the relationship between the empire and Philton, how about we form an alliance?" The emperor was naturally eager for this. Unexpectedly, Levin knelt on one knee and asked for Lani's hand in marriage. "I have admired Princess Lani for a long time. She is not only beautiful, lovely, and charming, but also kinder than anyone else." The scene instantly erupted in commotion. The emperor naturally wouldn't agree. Levin, however, was prepared to retreat in order to advance. Just as the two were in a stalemate, the guards outside loudly announced the arrival of Duke Mars. It turned out that EUs had rushed back the moment the war ended, even foregoing sleep for several days, just to see Lani as quickly as possible. But when he arrived outside the palace, he overheard Levin proposing to Lani. He immediately barged in. The cunning emperor was quite displeased with his safe return, let alone offering any commendation. And as rivals in love often do, their eyes met with a flash of animosity. The two noblemen, while shaking hands, secretly competed with each other in a show of strength. And so, the matter of the proposal was left unresolved. After the banquet, the two finally had some time alone. Lani couldn't help but ask if he had been serious just now. She received an affirmative answer. Putting everything aside, "Do I have a place in your heart?" Lani felt apologetic, always accepting his help but unable to reciprocate his feelings. Unexpectedly, Levin gave a relieved smile. He knew very well who Lani loved. He had spoken up only to express his feelings clearly and to exact a small revenge on the emperor. Just then, a worried EUs came after them. Unseen, Levin gave a self-deprecating laugh. He had thought he was one step ahead this time, but he was still too late. The empire's three most formidable men were all pursuing the princess. Unexpectedly, the second male lead took the initiative to lead the third male lead away, leaving space for the main characters. The two siblings, reunited after so long, weren't distant. On the contrary, the distance had made them closer, especially EUs, who found his sister even more beautiful than before. He pulled out the birthday gift he had prepared from his pocket. Inside was a beautifully crafted hairpin. He eagerly put it on his sister's hair. Lani happily expressed her liking, but her smile made EUs blush and quickly flee the scene. After returning, Lani carefully examined the hairpin, her heart filled with uncontainable joy. She hadn't expected her brother, so busy on the battlefield, to personally prepare a gift. Just as she was looking forward to seeing him again, she noticed her brother's figure outside the window. Hughes, having not been able to speak properly earlier, had bypassed the guards and climbed through the window late at night. Lani's delight was uncontainable. She immediately asked if her brother had been injured during this time. Although EU spoke lightly of it, Lani knew very well that her brother carried the burden of the Mars family, and it couldn't simply be described as hard work. So she took her brother's hand and used her divine power to heal his wounds. Overcome by this long-awaited care, EUs couldn't help himself and pulled his sister into a hug, but he quickly released her when he realized what he had done. He hadn't expected to be so impulsive. Perhaps he had truly missed her too much. Lani also expressed her intense longing, tears falling uncontrollably. A simple pat on the head, like before, would have sufficed, but EUs froze. Seeing his sister in her nightgown, it seemed to dawn on him that she was a grown woman now. Watching the girl wave goodbye, EUs felt as if something had violently struck his heart. He couldn't bear to imagine how much he would regret it if Lani were taken away by someone else. A week quickly passed. During this time, Hughes didn't appear again. An indignant Bianca, after learning the whole story, suddenly became very agitated. You had just finished bathing, wearing a sexy nightgown. He's definitely avoiding you because he panicked seeing you as a woman for the first time. A belatedly embarrassed Lonnie nearly wanted to crawl into a hole. But the bold Bianca thought this was a good thing. He's already seen your body. You can't keep avoiding him. Just propose to him first. Though a physical attack is the best strategy. Lonnie was speechless at this. While she knew Bianca wasn't demure, she hadn't expected her to be so audacious. The most important thing now is to show your feminine charm. Let's start special training.